parameters. Once we get sweaty and out of breath, it works.
You might be stuck in the house, but let's keep moving and get off the
You
couch.
can use your couch to elevate your feet if you're lying on your back.
Off the Couch, Off the Ball's new lunchtime fitness program. You can get it on all our social channels and offtheball.com every day from 1 p.m.
OTB. OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Right, a very good morning to you. Welcome along to OTB AM. It is Thursday morning. That's right, it is Thursday morning. The 26th, had to lift that one up. 26th of March here, and we're with you every morning on OTB AM from 7:30 until 9:30. If you join us late, don't worry. On Periscope, you can spool back, or you can catch us on YouTube, or you can get the podcast if you don't want to look at our ugly mugs of a morning. Owen Sheehan, good morning to you. How are you?
Very well, Ger. How are you?
You're kind of like in the Big Brother house. You know, this is like day 77 in the Big Brother house. We didn't talk about the Big Brother situation in Germany, did we? Or did we talk about this on air, where they didn't tell everybody in the Big Brother house in Germany what was going on? And then I didn't see the episode, but like I would dearly like to see an English subtitled version of the episode where they told everybody, by the way, there's a global pandemic ripping through Europe at the moment, and you know, this might be the safest place for you.
Yeah, God, I forgot about this actually. German Big Brother cast told about pandemic live on television. This was shortly after St. Patrick's Day. Much like yourself, I realised that this thing was a story when the producers had said, yes, we are going to tell them. You know, it's good of them to uphold one of the founding principles of Big Brother, that you would not be told about anything from the outside world. I often used to wonder, on World Cup years and the European Championships years, how they managed to do it, not knowing quite exactly how England were getting on in the World Cup. But on this case, like I'm just reading the BBC article on it now, one contestant who's a carer burst into tears and reportedly said she was worried about her mum who has a lung condition. So what a thing to drop on somebody immediately, that they're stuck in there, and to say, oh, by the way, people who you love, their lives are at risk. So that's a fairly, I guess, a bit of a plot twist for people who were in there and for everybody in general. I'm not sure, did they actually cancel the whole thing? I presume they did.
I don't think so. I think the plan was to keep it going. Certainly it was at the time. I haven't seen since. So maybe they've seen better. Or maybe they've decided that actually their Z-list celebrity ambitions are best served by being one of the few remaining things that's on TV during a global pandemic. I don't know.
Well, I guess they're quarantined from everything, aren't they? So they will also be safe, and it's one of the things that can continue to go ahead. Like I don't know, it's a very good idea. You've now put Big Brother into my head. Like we've spoken about a lot of weird things that people have been binging. I did actually start watching back all seasons of Big Brother at one point.
No.
A few years ago.
No.
I can't remember exactly what the reason was. I think I was like when I was in college.
Where are they?
They're on YouTube. Like a lot of them are on YouTube.
All the way back to like the original 2000s,
No,
first one.
Not right. Like there was obviously a very good twist at the end where there was a guy who was leaving notes all around the Big Brother house and he got found out. So that was a great twist at the end. But I think the whole season was kind of poor. So I went about a few seasons in when you had the likes of Nikki, the most iconic, you know, the Who Is She rant series, and I think it was at the end, and there was like a big fight in the house that year as well. So I got to the fight where they had like set up another bed sit beside the house, and they were watching the original house and like setting tasks on people, while the people in the original house had thought those two women had been kicked out of the house. So there was an incredible twist when they were actually brought back in, and there was a big fight. And I think shortly thereafter I stopped watching it, but that was a good 50 to 60 episodes into the season. So yeah, like it hasn't even taken COVID-19 for me to reach my lowest point as a binge watcher.
You were in college when you were doing this, were you?
I think it was like a month of study for one exam that I had. So.
Okay, so you had nothing to do. Did you have a relationship at the time, Owen? I'm willing
No.
to bet no.
You probably saw that answer coming, but Big Brother is as good a relationship for any person in college is what I say.
Nikki was 2003. Big Brother 7 it says here. Could that be right?
Big Brother 7 can't have been 7 because the first one was.
Big Brother 7 was 2006. 2006
Okay.
says before Fame 2003 on her Wikipedia page. Sorry, I just saw. I thought the first entry would be her big brother, but no, they went back. They delved deep into the life of Nikki Graham, which is her name.
Nikki Graham.
What age were you in 2006?
Like 12. I do vaguely remember it being on. I remember it starting, but I wouldn't have been allowed to watch that.
This is a wormhole I hadn't intended to go down because there's genuine sports news-ish over the last 24 hours where those crazy French bastards are talking about hosting the Tour de France behind closed doors was the phrase that was used, as in the crowd won't come out and sit at the side of the street and drink all day, which kind of takes away the magic of the Tour de France.
I would have thought the Tour de France is the one sporting event where social distancing is actually upheld at its most, even on a regular year. So what you would do is just take away the start town and that any fans getting into the start town, and there would be no village beforehand, and same at the finish line as well for every stage. But generally it's like a couple sitting in front of their caravan, or a family sitting at the front of their house as the race goes by. So that is the vast majority of live fans. As the Tour de France organisers have said over the last couple of days, the vast majority of their income comes from television rights, because people aren't paying in to watch the Tour de France. They might be paying something at the start village or at the end town, but that's about it. So like, it's a shout. Like, we've been speaking about what are the things that can possibly go ahead first. And it's definitely a shout that cycling could be the thing that goes ahead. Like, you just have to be worried about these teams that are camped up in hotels for long periods of time.
And buses.
And buses, like insanely close to one another.
Yeah.
Like, if you had even a smidge of a condition that could be passed on, it will be passed on in the Tour de France. It doesn't matter when you're out there and you're hundreds of meters apart from one another on the track. Once you get into your bus and once you get into your hotel that night, you were in close quarters for the guts of a month. So, that's the one concern you would have. But fans-wise, social distancing could be perfectly implementable into the Tour de France.
Okay, I'm not sure I see that on. I think that once the athletes are so close to each other, like, unless they've all had it, you can have teams you can only pick people who've already had it, so they have the antibodies and they're going to be fine. They're not going to pass it on.
Just to clarify, I do mean that if the athletes are in danger, this thing should not be going ahead, no question about it. But if you're looking at a purely fans point of view, then I think you can actually implement social distancing fairly well. But like, is that not a preventative measure? Is that not a measure to actually flatten the curve, rather than when we're in the middle of the summer and this thing is right after its peak, that perhaps social distancing is not an acceptable way to actually do anything? That, as you say, the behind closed doors element, no fans allowed to watch it, might be the way. But like, it is hard to see how you could actually have a safe team bus or a safe hotel anytime soon.
Yeah. I mean, until we get to that point where somehow everybody has worked out a way to do that, we are certainly groping in the dark at the moment for what's coming next. 7:38, it says on the clock above your head over there. In Gaelic Games news overnight, all GAA facilities are to remain closed until April 19th. Director General Tom Ryan has requested that all pitches, walkways and gathering areas be sealed off in line with new government guidelines. Ryan says they're working hard to ensure the GAA is in the best possible state when games are allowed to resume. We haven't heard from Tommy Rooney about the abandoned GAA pitch in West Clare, which at some point might actually become a place of pilgrimage, Owen, given that Tommy is trying to claim that he's kicked the most remote point in Irish history. And technically it's an old GAA ground, so it might not be closed to run-of-the-mill hoi polloi Tommy and his buddies.
True. Has he actually claimed to kick the most remote point in Ireland? I don't think that's possible, really, to be honest. I think the most remote point in Ireland has to have been kicked
on the islands.
On the islands, or in one of the four corners, really, or an island off one of the four corners. Ideally, that would be where the most remote point to be kicked. Like, isn't there a fantastic pitch on the Aran Islands that often gets shared around when people are like, look at these epic sports grounds? That's the one that kind of sticks out as the most remote point. But Tommy's was impressive. He was kind of lurking around uninhabited fields there over the course of the weekend. It was on his Instagram account, and it actually kind of looked pretty epic, to be honest with you, where there was this abandoned pitch with old goalposts, old dressing rooms still standing. You could work away and kick the ball over the bar. So I just assumed that this was a thing over the last couple of days. I know that there was some Kerry footballers spotted kicking the ball to one another on Inch Beach down at the weekend as well. So people haven't exactly been needing to go into GA pitches to get their kick around done.
I mean, obviously you're not supposed to be doing that, but if you wear gloves, is it all right? Like, is that, so long as you're not like shouldering each other sweatily, kicking the ball to each other, is that poking a ball to each other?
You'd imagine if you're of inter-county standard, drive to the area where you're going to kick the ball to each other separately, stay 40 or whatever, 20 to 40 yards away from one another, and no ball's going to go astray because you're that good. And you can just get back into your car and drive away again, having not had to come into contact with anybody. I'm sure it's something that people have been engaging in over the last couple of weeks as they proceed to lose their mind.
In tennis, the fate of this year's Wimbledon Championships will be decided next week. An emergency meeting of the All England Club's main board will decide whether to postpone, cancel or go ahead with the 134th Championships. The French Open at Roland Garros has already been pushed back to late September. The All England clubs say postponing or cancelling the championship were options, but not playing behind closed doors. So cancelling it seems a little bit early. Certainly, wouldn't it be great for this to be the 2 weeks after the American, after the US Open, or even like give everybody a week off after the US Open and then play Wimbledon? Like, it's not going to be, it's not going to be bright all day. You can start a good bit earlier, start at 10 o'clock every morning, finish at 4, except on the main courts, play them under lights. Do they have lights on the main courts? They must have, because they've got a roof.
Presume they do. Like, I've never seen them ever need it at Wimbledon, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, it's not a bad shout. Like last year, if you go by our climate last year, you could play lawn tennis right the way up to November. Is that too much of a stretch?
No.
I don't recall anything prior to Christmas even being that bad. As you say, it's just a dying light. But if you give yourself potentially even an extra couple of days, if you started even in a couple of days earlier and just string it out a little bit more, it's a possibility. We're set up. Hopefully, we're set up for a fairly epic autumn of sport where everything is just concluding together. All these championships, as I say, fingers crossed that this thing can actually turn around. But every sports organisation is now looking towards either a September start date or a finish date, and then even come next year there'll be like a big compression as well. When there's like a story this morning about a potential springtime Olympic Games next year as well. So those bumper weekends of sport of the past potentially have nothing on what's coming down the tracks.
Well, there's a 9-month run, hopefully, from September all the way through to next summer, where you're going to have the Euros, the Olympics, the 4 major tennis tournaments, the 4 major golf tournaments potentially, and the conclusion of this season's Champions League, Premier League, European Cup Rugby.
And championships, let's face it, in GAA.
The championships, exactly. September's going to be a pretty good month. We can all look forward to September.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. Let's hope so. But it's something to certainly get a little bit hopeful about. Here's
what's coming up on the show this morning. 7:43 a.m. here on OTB AM. Ger and Eoin with you every morning from 7:30 to 9:30. Our lockdown latest, is that what we're calling it? What did we come up with a better name on?
No, the lockdown latest is 100% the bang average name we are using for this.
8 o'clock. Owen's address to the nation at 8:15. If you haven't seen this yet, then you're in for a treat. Off the couch at 20 past 8 every day at noon. Every day at 1 o'clock. Off the couch is released on all of our social channels, but we speak to whoever's doing it for us at 20 past 8 every morning. And it's Andy Moran, the Mayo legend, who's going to join us around about 20 past 8 to talk to us about, again, being a small business owner and what we can all do from our homes to keep ourselves sane. Will O'Callaghan's going to run us through the latest sports news at 8:45 and also introduce the new podcast that the lads have done. Is it called Off the Ropes?
Off the Top Rope.
Off the Top Rope.
I was hoping to go for Off the Turnbuckle. Same thing really, I guess, isn't it?
So that's coming your way at, we'll play you a little bit of it as well at 8:55 this morning. And then we're talking to two Kennedys from New York. So James Kennedy is the founder and owner of Rugby United New York. He's also works in the construction industry. He's got a construction business in New York City. And Johnny Kennedy, who is another friend of the show, who runs a couple of bars, the Long Hall pub in particular, just checking in with them to see what exactly the situation is like on the ground for Irish people. Horrific scenes coming from New York, and the details of how the state and the city in particular has been impacted by the coronavirus. The news is pretty bleak from there over the last 3 or 4 days in particular. You're starting to see healthcare workers dying as a result of contracting the coronavirus while treating patients in New York City. So we'll talk to the lads about what else is happening over in New York City and how the city is responding to it and what the impact has been like for Irish people over there. That's coming your way at around about 9:05 this morning. Now, 7:45, time for the newspapers.
OTB AM.
We're going to start as ever with offtheball.com. We recommend you get onto the website this morning for your latest news and information when it comes to what's happening around the world of sport, and also, of course, what's happening with some of the big interviews that we're bringing for you. Latest news is that GMAC is worried about whether or not he's going to be qualified for participation at this year's rescheduled Masters whenever it actually happens. He's just inside the world's top 50 and had been due to tee it up at Augusta before the first major of the season was postponed, so it's now likely to be pushed back to the autumn. And he told a PGA conference call that all the players on tour are now playing a waiting game because they don't know what's happening there. On the lips, O'Gara and Stringer discuss Munster's kiss and make up policy, which obviously is one of those policies that's going to have to be kicked out for the foreseeable future anyway. Whenever you row, you had to kiss, and it had to be on the lips. So the two lads were on last night with Joe talking about what makes great partnerships. We also did a great piece about the opening of Croke Park with Kevin Doyle, Kevin Kilban, John O'Shea, and the GA president at the time, Sean Kelly. Wanted for crimes against Irish football, Kilban, Doyle and O'Shea on Staunton Rain. And the Staunton talking about the canal end, Croke Park's Peter McKenna on history. Peter McKenna also as part of that deep dive. So a great little piece of history for you last night. If you were unfamiliar with Rule 42 and all that and how it came to be, then some great stuff for you last night. Available on all our podcasts. And still clinging on there, Dream Team top 10 Harchester United players of all time. This is Colin Buig's piece.
I've got nothing to do with this.
Right. But you inspired it. You gave it cover. You're a fellow traveller, I believe, is how it would be described in Irish political terms. Right, so I want to bring you the Racing Post front cover this morning. I don't normally start with the Racing Post, but this will be the last Racing Post for the foreseeable future. And it's a picture of various people from the racing industry. And see you soon. We're taking a short break, but we'll be back when racing resumes. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay home. So it's a slimmer paper today, 44 pages, but the Racing Post have taken the very difficult decision to stop publishing until racing comes back. And Tom Kerr, the editor, says, it's with great sadness I must announce that following today's edition, the Racing Post will be temporarily suspending publication, with racing in Britain and Ireland halted, betting shops closed, and our government's urging everyone to stay at home as much as possible to slow the spread of the virus. We've been left with no other choice. I wish all our readers the very best. Join us online, but above all, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay home. So, very difficult times for the sports industry, very difficult times for racing. And again, we've seen loads of newspapers lay off staff locally here over the last while, and the Racing Post has taken the decision to stop publishing. So it's been an iconic newspaper for the last 30 years, and it's not going to be on your newsstands tomorrow. So if people want to support newspapers and radio stations and TV stations, now would be a good time to do it, because it turns out they're important for getting the information out there. What have you got for us, Owen?
The Irish Independent this morning leads with GAA instructs a complete shutdown of all facilities. The GAA has ordered all clubs to close their facilities completely in response to the coronavirus pandemic. This means that individual players won't be free to use club pitches for solitary practice sessions or even to avail of a club gym when no one else is present. You've also got Jack Carty praising equitable IRFU move to protect jobs. This is Jack Carty believes the IRFU made the best of a bad situation by implementing pay deferrals for the duration of the current crisis. Neil Francis is writing this morning saying we cannot let England's bad boys become the new normal. O'Riordan remaining down under as AFL braces itself. And something we'll get into later in the show, why Atalanta versus Valencia has become known as Game Zero.
Yeah, that Neil Francis piece is essentially what Brian O'Driscoll was saying as well about Farrell and the taunting and England's attitude. You can dig that out on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/offtheball, and you can look back at that and listen to the podcast. Next up, we have the Irish Examiner this morning. And the front page of the Examiner is Kerrigan expects no reward for Cork's fine league form. This is John Fogarty speaking with Paul Kerrigan. And then revenue hit, but coronavirus will also save the GAA money. So John Fogarty's gone through heat, light and power, accommodation, insurance, marketing, match day running costs, mileage, which is obviously a big enough amount, $1.5 million, meals and nutrition, 1.2 million, pardon me, in vouched nutrition expenses, pitch upkeep, playing gear and equipment. Obviously O'Neill's shut last week, but are back up and running, it says here, manufacturing antibacterial masks. And professional fees, physios, masseurs, strength and conditioning, all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely going to be cheaper to run an inter-county team this year than it has been in the past. And about the leagues, Owen, what do you think? What should happen? So if this year's league isn't completed, Cork, who have won 5 from 5, are a point short of guaranteed promotion. And even if they had guaranteed promotion and the league isn't finished, can teams come down? What happens? This is a bit of a conundrum for the GAA to fix.
So if we come back mid-summer, I really can't see the leagues being played at that point. Like, it's not just the inter-county game we have to worry about here. It is a club calendar which is already hugely compressed. I think the league is going to be scrapped. I think that it's just going to be, the plug is just going to be pulled, and Cork won't get their promotion. Meath, Mayo, for example, won't get their relegation. Fermanagh, isn't it? Going down from Division 2 won't get their relegation. Like, even if Cork had the required number of points this time, at this stage, to get automatic promotion, there's no team that got the required points in Division 2 to come down. So you can't actually make that change. And even if you could, it seems a bit weird that nothing else would happen and you're allowing teams to get promoted and relegated. Cork clearly deserve to get promoted. They are going to get promoted if the thing resumes. But it's just hard to see the resumption of this competition at some point before the end of the year. Like, is it a situation where maybe you get rid of the league finals and then you just run the thing off and whoever finishes top of each table will be crowned league champion for that division?
Yeah.
That's one weekend less to play.
Yeah, you can do that, right? Wouldn't that make sense?
But one weekend, how much of a difference is that going to make?
Well, sorry, I'm saying it would make sense if you have these games, the last few games, as pre-season warm-ups for everybody to get some level of fitness and playing time into players' legs, so that whenever the championship starts, if it is straight knockout, it's not just going to be one game. So you've got 2 league games left for everybody, right? And I don't know, can you play that? Can you do hurling and football? You don't need hurling at all, do you? Because all of that was already decided, I think, was it?
There was, we were into the knockout stages of the hurling.
Yes.
So maybe you just leave that. Maybe you leave all the knockout stages of all the leagues. Like, you had sorted your relegation in hurling. The business was done,
So,
as far as I'm concerned.
Grant, so what you do need is some kind of business being done so that Cork aren't punished for being good, and they actually get the opportunity to go up next season, because they clearly were a team who were going to get promotion. I think Louth had 1 point in their division and they were due to play Cork, so Cork needed 1 more point. Play those games as a pre-season warm-up and then get straight into your straight knockout? Is that a way around this?
It's not the worst idea. Definitely not the worst idea I've heard. Like, what do you give them? Do you give them a weekend off in between the conclusion of the regular season of the league and then the beginning of the championship? That could certainly be an option. And I guess some people might argue that you would like to have your challenge games or whatever going into the championship, but I just don't think we have that luxury at this point. Like,
these are those for you. That's exactly what these games are. And I don't think you need a week off either. Like, you know, I mean, maybe if you're going to be the All-Ireland champions, you'll end up playing 7 games in a row if you end up playing 2 league games. But, sorry, maybe you only play the league games that matter. So if there are dead rubber games in Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, Division 4, you don't bother playing those unless the teams involved want them as games. Another alternative is that next season you actually don't have Divisions 1, 2, 3 and 4, but Divisions 1 and 2 merge, Divisions 3 and 4 merge, and you sort out who's in Division 1 and 2 and who's in Division 3 and 4 over the next couple of years. So the 2 bottom teams, you do conferences for those 2 giant ones, and then the 2 bottom teams in both get relegated, the 2 top teams in both, they get promoted, and away you go. Seems like I might be complicating things a bit there, but it made sense in my head when I thought about it yesterday.
Is there a possibility of flipping the calendar and going back to the old style of playing the league at the end of the year as your sort of promotion relegation to Tier 2, which would not come into play until 2021?
Yeah, you could totally do that. And again, we're all going to be crying. But then, like the club matches that have not had any opportunity to be played, that's when they're supposed to be being played, and that would be a window for them in the reasonable weather of October and November to get those games played. And that might be more important for everybody else's mental health to like get out and play games for the sport that they've been cooped up and away from for so long.
Potentially, or the GEA might just say, listen, this is a terrible situation. Of course it is. But clubs that are involved in county championships and are still going in their club championship can proceed. The counties who are playing their leagues will just have to make do without their club players who are still involved in the business end of even if you said it out loud, it's just ridiculous, because if that only ever worked in the past when you had All Ireland championships that were underway, so you only had one club. But no, you can't. What am I talking? You cannot run the league and a club championship if you get to the All Ireland stage. If you get, or even post your county finals and you get to the provincial stage, at that point then could you start the national leagues, and then every county is just missing one club from their inter-county setup. They've had to deal with that. Oftentimes they've had to deal with that in the past when it came to club championship finals in the month of March. So they could possibly put up with it again. But there's going to have to be more overlap than ever. The problem is, in the best year possible, there is already overlap in the GEA calendar. So we're running into very, very tight corners here already.
Yeah. So everything needs to be truncated. Like maybe you can't play the league and everybody decides, tough luck, that was really hard on Cork. They're going to get the benefits of this at some point down the road. They did look like they were a team who were developing and emerging and harnessing the talent, and
Well, here's the thing about that. Just don't play the Tailteann Cup this year. Don't allow Cork to be punished for not getting promoted this year. The punishment for not getting promoted is playing in a Tier 2 championship. Just park that until 2021. If Cork get promoted from Division 3 in 2021, they will not be in the Tailteann Cup. And therefore, they have avoided ever being a Tier 2 county by definition, by the new definition that we have of that. So I think that could be a workaround, that the punishment wouldn't be as severe, that you are playing the Tier 1 championship. Now, granted, it's just because there is no Tier 2 that actually exists. That's how you're avoiding your punishment. And maybe they do want to get that underway this summer. We don't know what their plans are for that quite yet, considering it's the first every year.
Yeah. And look, again, they probably won't play that this year, but as I made the point yesterday, it would actually be good for the teams who get knocked out. If there's no league and there's straight knockout, then there's one inter-county match for literally half of the country to look forward to for the rest of the year. And maybe we need a bit more than that, just like to talk about and to watch and to get enthusiastic about and to have the opportunity to go and see and to listen to.
And maybe the back door is all towards Sam Maguire. That's like the idea, I think it was Sean Kelly who had floated this idea last week, that you'd have a 32-team championship, all the first round losers would then go into the Tailteann Cup.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe all the first round losers actually play off against one another, or
for a backdoor
draw with the second round losers, and then there's a draw, and then there's like a bye week, for example, for first round winners or whatever, that could be brought into play because of the close compression of fixtures. A bye week would be something that would be very valuable. Like, these are all the different options that could come into play if you are playing a straight knockout competition. I think the number one thing that the GEA will be proceeding with is all options are on the table, and we cannot afford to cling to any notions of tradition this year. I think you just have to play things in the most efficient way possible. There's enough time for tradition in 2021.
Yeah, and we can have good long conversations about that when the time comes. You got the Irish Times for us next, Don?
Yeah, Barcelona considering a 70% pay cut for as long as lockdown lasts. Sid Lowe is writing this morning that the club is the only one in La Liga to admit they are looking at ways to reduce the economic impact of the coronavirus. Ian O'Riordan, meanwhile, is asking what Tokyo 2020 might look like in 2021. No athletes' village and fewer sports and venues are among the possibilities. And how Trojan giant Ryan changed the face of boxing. This is Dave Hannigan writing about Paddy Ryan in the early 1920s. And as you mentioned there already, Ger, Racing Post stops publishing for the time being. Final story there, then at the bottom of the Irish Times, RFU will ask Jones to take a pay cut in light of massive losses.
Eddie Jones, the second highest paid coach in the international game on 750 grand a year, 820,000 euros, is going to be asked to take, it looks like a pay cut, potentially 50 grand, maybe a bit more for him in terms of the reduction in his fee. Who's the highest paid coach in World Rugby?
So what, Eddie Jones is the highest paid in Six Nations?
This is the second highest paid coach in the international game.
Oh, sorry. You'd imagine Foster?
I'm not sure. But isn't the whole point about the New Zealand job, it's a job that you love to do because it's your patriotic duty to do it, and so you don't sting the country for as much as you can possibly get out of them?
Does Razzie Erasmus get an extra few quid for the sort of dual purpose of his role, being a director of rugby really for South Africa? Maybe he's the highest paid player?
Maybe for winning it. There was a bonus to the point where he became, for momentarily, a bit like the extra 9 million that Antonio Conte got last year to top up his salary. That Ian O'Riordan piece is interesting to talk about what Tokyo 2020 might look like in 2021. Makes the point that hundreds of units in the 23 tower blocks comprising the Athletes' Village have already been sold. So, as you would expect, the developer puts the plans up for the Athlete Village, sells stuff off the plans. They'll be available to move into the week after the Olympic Games is over. And now all of a sudden it's like, I've given you my deposit for this apartment and I don't have this apartment until another year, or I'm going to have to move out for a month because some athlete wants to come and like do whatever it is that the athletes get up to in the Athletes' Village. No thanks. I'm going to take my house and I'm going to keep it. No?
Yeah, I can't imagine too many people would be interested in subletting their apartment to any athletes for the duration of the Olympics. Somehow they might just need to build a new athletes' village or find someone somewhere, or else the IOC needs to pay that developer and say, listen, actually, we are going to overrun the rent that you thought that you were going to actually get, and we're going to pay your rent until next year, and you're going to keep those apartments vacant, which kind of seems really grotesque, but it might be an option for the IOC. And
you can see where the money starts to pile up pretty quickly. And then obviously the golf clubs were recommended to close by the GUI and the ILGU. Clubs big and small concerned over the future is the headline on Philip Reed's piece, which takes us nicely to the Mail, which I know is actually one of the papers that you were supposed to do on, and I'm skipping the order here, so maybe I'll go back to that and I'll go back to the Guardian instead, which is the order I'm being told to stick to. So if we've got the Guardian next, the back page headline is about Wimbledon. It's Novak Djokovic and Simona Halep unlikely to be able to defend the Wimbledon titles that they won last year. Emergency meeting called with prospects looking bleak. And Premiership clubs to face claims for wage cuts. Premiership clubs are likely to face claims of unlawful deduction of wages amid growing player unrest at the blanket 25% pay cuts imposed. It's understood there's a sense of frustration at a number of clubs, particularly from players whose contracts expire in the summer, and action is expected to be taken. Yesterday, this is rugby obviously, London Irish became the latest club to confirm they'd implemented the reduction in wages, with the Premiership suspended until the 24th of April owing to coronavirus. So we'll see what happens with the rugby players. And in terms of the tennis, it's a matter of finding a window, and there aren't many of those for big sporting events. American TV, to a large extent, determines when a lot of these events can take place. It's not just about the tennis schedule. There's NFL, college sport, baseball, golf, and to a much lesser extent, ice hockey, soccer, and tennis. So it's going to be very interesting to see if they can find a window. So when Roland Garros and the organisers of the French Open were criticised during the week for going off on a solo run, what they were doing was staking out their territory. We've got these 2 weeks in September, lads. What are you going to do? What are your plans? Oh, you've got other plans. Oh, you don't have plans yet? Well, we may have plans. We've got those 2 weeks in September. So, outflanked. Wimbledon outflanked by the French again.
Yeah. I've got the Irish Daily Mirror this morning. Waging war is the headline. Prem and EFL stars to be asked to take pay cuts and salary deferrals. Reality bites as football feels the pinch. Reds are raring to go on £120 million Sancho. Meanwhile, this is Manchester United confident, increasingly confident, the Mirror says, of landing Jadon Sancho on a £120 million deal this summer. They're in pole position to bring him back to the Premier League, with domestic rivals balking at the fee wanted by Borussia Dortmund. 120 million? I think that's probably worth it for Jadon Sancho in today's market. I think if you're balking at that, you don't realise what way the market is trending at the moment. You've got
the global pandemic on.
Football and transfers, as we established yesterday, doesn't sleep. Are we actually going to expect football transfers to nosedive as a result of this?
Yes.
Do we think so?
Yes. Well, let's think about the knock-on impact of the TV rights. Do the TV companies pay for matches that don't take place? Probably not. So if matches don't take place, and if there's a suspension of any part of this season or next season, then the amount of money that the clubs have goes down. Will the clubs just go, oh, look, we've agreed to pay you all this money, but actually there's been a global pandemic and clauses in all our contracts are like, woo, we can get out of this if we need to. There's no way that they're going to pay the players the same amount of money. And if they're not paying the players the same amount of money, why would you invest so much money in that asset in the first place?
It's true. Like, I'm trying to think of the last recession and how the transfer market seemed to accelerate through it. I know that was a kind of a far different situation, that you don't have to pull the plug pulled globally all at once in a certain manner. The game didn't come to a standstill, and television rights wouldn't have been affected that way. I just think that in the recent past, there's been a situation where football has kind of been immune to a point. That's kind of my thinking behind it. But what you're saying is probably, it's also a thing where like agents are now in a very powerful position to say, well, my player got a pay cut, you will let him leave the club, or you will, or whatever the situation is. I think there might be a little bit more fluidity on that front. Like, are we talking a 120 million fee for Sancho's now, a 100 million fee?
Yeah.
Or are we talking like still? I mean, we're talking in football terms. We're talking small change here. Like 120 million pounds for Sancho. Could that happen after an economic downturn? Could it still happen? Possibly. But then I guess the idea of clubs balking at a 120 million pound transfer fee is probably more understandable in the current climate.
So the Telegraph. Back page of the Telegraph is chaos reigns over long delay to games. IOC sets up task force to resolve long list of issues, fears over date, qualifying, funding and logistics. It is a bit of a logistical nightmare when you've had this thing in the books for 6 to 8 years and all of a sudden it's like, no, I can't have it. National treasure, oldest living winning jockey, 60 years on. Mission accomplished. Jerry Scott with Merriman 2 and Barney Baker, who looked after the horse, at trainer Neville Crump's yard following their Grand National victory in the 1960 race at Aintree. And the RFU are going to provide 7 million relief for grassroots, but faces 50 million hit. The RFU and their executive team are going to take a pay cut as well. Plan to offer NHS Heroes free tickets, gets cool response. So there's a football story. A plan to make 100,000 free tickets available to NHS workers across professional football as a thank you has met with surprisingly lukewarm response from some Premier League clubs. Remarkably, the clubs appear to be reluctant to sign up to an initiative launched by Brighton, who promised 1,000 tickets, and which was immediately backed by Bournemouth, who matched that figure for all key workers. Brighton invited other Premier League, Football League, Scottish and Northern Irish senior clubs to join the campaign by handing the baton to one another, but the scheme has met with opposition. So, there you go.
The Irish Daily Mail, Ger, this is the story you want to get into. Rogue golfers. Clubs warned as restriction rules ignored. So golf authorities last night moved to clamp down on rogue golfers flouting the restriction directives imposed to combat the spread of the coronavirus. Sportsmail understands players were still accessing various courses around the country yesterday, despite Tuesday's announcement by golf bodies that all clubs' practice facilities and courses across the island close with immediate effect. So the GUI communications chief, Alan Kelly, confirmed that all clubs affiliated to the GUI and Irish Ladies Golf Unit have been warned by email about the restrictions being breached and how further offences would not be tolerated. So it seems that people are still sneaking out for a couple of holes. There
were a couple of clubs that were open. They were saying, look, we've taken all precautions properly. We're observing social distance. It kind of fits the criteria of getting some exercise, as Leo Varadkar said in his speech. So we'll see what happens with that. The Star is next. Star here is next, back page of the Irish Daily Star. Prem brace for pay cuts is that headline. And then Sligo GAA warns clubs. Sligo GAA have issued a warning letter to clubs indicating they have strong evidence that at least one adult club team have continued with collective training despite the ongoing coronavirus crisis. If anybody's organising collective training and anybody gets sick as a result of that, there should be significant repercussions for that. You shouldn't be allowed to get away with this kind of stuff. Like, if the local pushback from society isn't strong enough to stop this, then the message hasn't got through. You can't be organising collective training. Like, it's ridiculous, and it's dangerous, and it's irresponsible. So if there is strong evidence that that's happening, then they should give that to the guards, and the guards should go up with batons. Anyway, we don't live in a police state, but we're getting that direction. United aim for Sancho, and Graham put the cup back. Ryder Cup hero Graham McDowell believes September's encounter with the US at Whistling Straits should be postponed unless a viable tournament schedule can be put in place beforehand for qualifiers. You got the Times on?
Yeah, the London Times this morning. Olympians facing cut in lottery funds. So Britain's Olympians obviously get 2/3 of their funding from lottery sales in the United Kingdom. Lottery sales are down as a result of the coronavirus, so they could face a cut in their funding. The other third comes from the Exchequer. They have committed to paying up that 1/3 of their funding. So it's going to be a tricky year or so for UK athletes in terms of getting their funding for Tokyo 2021. We've also got that story that Wimbledon is on the brink and Eddie Jones has been asked to accept less pay.
The Irish News is finally one for me this morning, and we've got the Irish News. Oh, we'll get it in a minute. There it is there. Brown remains hopeful of taking giant steps in AFL. This is Callum Brown, who we were talking about. And shutdown extended to April 19th by GAA. That's the directive issued by the Director General and the President of the GAA yesterday to close all facilities until April 19th, and no more points kicking from anybody, please. 087 180 180 is the number to WhatsApp us here if you want to get involved in our conversations this morning. It's 11 minutes past 8. Plenty more coming up in the next hour. Mayo star Andy Moran is going to join us from 8:15. Back with our lockdown roundup next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. OTB Sports Radio.
Here at OTB, we're not just about sport. Our man Richie McCormick knows his tunes. Every day at midday, Richie will be bringing us his Isolation Mix. It's an hour of music to help you switch off from the workday, even if you're working from home. Stick on the mix, get some fresh air, and take a walk while remembering to keep your 2-metre social distance, of course. That's Richie's Isolation Mix every day at midday on OTB Sports Radio. Listen on the Go Loud app or at offtheball.com/radio.
OTB AM.
Right. Liverpool left back Andy Robertson. A professional footballer kicking the ball into a target from 20 yards. It's good stuff, yeah. Might expect this level of accuracy from a world-class footballer. 3 out of 3. I mean, that's the one that they published, all right. That's Andy Robertson, keeping the nation's spirits still up. And here's Trent Alexander-Arnold. What's he up to? Oh, wow. He can chip a ball across the vast expanse of his back garden in his mansion. And it's a mic drop, Owen. It's a mic drop. He's walked off into down the tunnel, I believe it is.
Very impressive from the players doing exactly what they're expected to do. It's mind-blowing, Ger.
No. Trent Alexander-Arnold, Andy Robertson. Liverpool fans losing their shit over this. This is how you do a skills challenge. This is Ronan McElligott. Take it away. Basketball in the distance. Straight through it. Now that's pretty good, right?
It's incredible. I used to think that like those sort of videos were always fake. With all due respect to people in Ireland, I don't think there's somebody who's in their front garden in Ireland actually making a fake video of those. Like, that is real. I thought that, like, because you sometimes see these videos of like people doing these ridiculous tricks and like throwing a basketball over their head to the other end of the court and it goes in, and it's like, I don't know how they're doing this, but they're editing this. I can't imagine this one is this.
Or they've done it 10,000 times and that's the one that you get. I don't know if you saw Donaghy from the trampoline scoring a basket from his back garden, which again, plenty of room for him to throw the ball. It was brilliant. He was great accuracy from the big man. But Ron McElliott definitely handing Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson their ass when it comes to a skills challenge. What do you got for us next, Ron?
We're running down through the rest of the things we're seeing in our state of semi-lockdown. Here is a bishop going around doing long-range blessings. This was posted by Bertie Forprez on Reddit, the Ireland thread in Reddit. Keeping your social distancing going around to the estates, getting mass in. I'm sure you were concerned about this, Ger. How are people going to to keep it up? And this is it. Clearly standing and kneeling and everything in between in the estate. So. Good job to that bishop.
Everybody has to pull their weight.
Absolutely.
What's next?
Steph Curry, Ger. What's going on with Steph Curry? You spotted this online over over last night.
Hyped to talk all things COVID-19 with Dr. Fauci of the NIAID News tomorrow. So Fauci has been the sole voice of reason in the Trump administration's treatment of what's been going on. Basically, Trump is going to reopen everything in the next couple of days because he's bored. And Fauci has been like, no, this is really bad. We should really... And he's been kind of sidelined over the last couple of weeks. But Steph Curry, one of the most famous athletes on the planet, is using his own platform on Instagram to have a Q&A with Fauci to get people to take this seriously and stay at home. Luckily enough, all of the local politicians, the mayor of New York, the governor of California, they all understand exactly what's going on, and they've begun to take steps. A bit late to the day because obviously the federal warning system that they had in America was shut down because, who needs a warning system about pandemics which never happen, was essentially the Trump administration's decision to cut whatever small amount of budget that it would have been to alert the citizens of America and probably the rest of the world about how bad this was going to be. You want to talk about Mike Ashley?
Well, yesterday, Dick of the Day was the man in Walmart in Missouri licking the bottles of medicine. Today, your Dick of the Day is Mike Ashley. So, for a couple of reasons, really. First of all, he's Mike Ashley. Second of all, his Sports Direct company have increased prices on a string of sports equipment by more than 50%. So, these were internal documents seen by PA over the past couple of days. Some of the indoor exercise gear has shot up by as much as 67%. So because the company operates a system of having ticket prices followed by reduced stickers, it can be unclear sometimes what price a product was ever sold at. But pricing documents show that, say, for example, an Everlast 4-kilogram kettlebell has gone up from $9.99 to $14.99, although the sticker will say the original ticket price was $19.99. The cost of a 12 kg kettlebell by Everlast is now $39.99, up from $29.99. So you better have had your home gym installed before the pandemic, otherwise Sports Direct are going to screw you over. And then, of course, Mike Ashley was embroiled in this other story over the past couple of days. Himself and fellow good guy Tim Martin, the founder of Wetherspoons, caused a bit of uproar. Tim Martin said he wouldn't pay his staffs, his 43,000 staff, for 5 weeks while his pubs were shut. And then Mike Ashley was forced into an embarrassing U-turn on his decision to keep stores open after the government intervened. So he had tried to argue that his stores were selling essential items, but the essential category reserved for other items, of course. So it's not been a few good weeks. It's not been a good few days, actually, for a lot of rich people in the UK. Richard Branson hasn't exactly covered him in glory either. So, Mike Ashley, your Dick of the Day.
Right. That's our lockdown roundup this morning. Andy Moran's going to join us in a few minutes' time on OTB AM. But first, everybody, please sit down, put down that cup of tea. Eoin Sheehan would like to address the nation, his nation.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Ireland. I would like to address my nation. To the people of Ireland. To our President Michael D. Higgins. To Vice Admiral Mark Mellett. To Garda Commissioner Drew Harris. Chief Medical Officer Tony Houlihan. Leo, the two Simons, Mary and Mihal. I respect you all greatly, and I would like to put forth some of my thinking. We need to bring back the pink snack bar. In 2015, you took away the greatest thing Ireland has ever produced. A stick made of chocolate, and then wafer, and then chocolate, and then wafer, and then chocolate, and then wafer, and then chocolate. And beside that stick was another stick, made of chocolate, and then wafer, and then chocolate, and then you get the picture. And beside that, a third stick of glory. They say three's a crowd, but not when it comes to 3 delicious sticks of dynamite. In 2013, it was decided to remove one of those sticks. It was a devastating blow to our entire nation. 2 years later, in 2015, pink snack bars were removed forever. The last 5 years have been tough. For the last 5 years, cups of tea have been at their most lonely. For the last 5 years, pint men in random pubs all around Ireland have not had their sweet tooth properly massaged. We now live in a world entirely inhabited by the weird cousins of pink snacks. I'm talking about yellow snacks and purple snacks. Hey, yellow and purple, no one likes you. So do the right thing. Bring light back into our lives and bring back the pink snack. Together we stand. God bless us all.
We had a blockbuster show for you last night on OTB. Ronan O'Gara, Peter Stringer, Kevin Doyle, Kevin Kilban, former GAA President Sean Kelly and Dundalk boss Vinnie Perth all joined Joe. Each of those pieces are available to listen back on the OTB podcast network or to watch back via our YouTube channel. Peter McKenna was on as well talking about the opening in Croke Park, which is free to subscribe to, obviously. Andy Moran is going to join us next for the very latest episode of Off the Couch. First, here's Dundalk boss Vinnie Perth yesterday evening talking about his concerns about the impact social distancing could have on people's mental health.
That's my biggest concern, not just around their team or around football people, is the mental health now. You'll get people who, you see it in our own squad, you get some people who will just binge on away trips on Netflix. I can't see how you could binge on Netflix for 3 and 4 weeks at a time. It's just, it's not good for the head. You'll get some people who be glad to play Fortnite or FIFA or whatever the case may be. I suppose what I've done is I've dropped them in. They obviously, I presume, or I know for a fact, they have their own WhatsApp group where
they bitch about you.
Absolutely, yeah. So which is part. I did it as a player, so once you know that, it's half of the battle. But I'll drop them certain podcasts maybe, or recommend different books to people. You can only recommend, but ultimately, it's not everyone's cup of tea to read a book or to do different things. We encourage them to get out where it's safe. And again, dressing room banter is something that most normal people, as in people outside of sport or dressing rooms like that, don't understand. But it is so important to young people. It's the one thing players will tell you when they retire, that they miss it. They miss. Even if you were the one that generally got the mickey taken out, you miss going into that dressing room. You miss that sort of that banter. You miss people hiding your boots or your shoes or your shower gel, and it keeps you young. And so ultimately, they will miss that. And it's important that they keep their focus. Athletes at this level, and you'd have so many of them on your show, they're so focused. They're focused every day. Even on holidays, they're doing certain things. And now, to be honest with you, it's very hard to keep footballers focused.
Vinnie Perth, always very thoughtful, speaking with Joe Malloy last night. Now, every day at around about 1 o'clock, we're releasing a new video to get you off the couch. And our expert practitioner today is none other than the legend that is Andy Moran. Andy, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Morning, guys. How are you keeping?
How are you keeping yourself? What level of mental health have you got in fitness, and how are you getting on?
No, it was great to hear Vinnie talking about it there. I would 100% agree with him. It's a very kind of strange time we're living in, and I suppose we always talk about the kind of the health impacts of COVID-19 and the economic impacts it's going to have, but the social impact it's going to have is huge. And in our gyms, we closed the 3 gyms last Friday week, so we're closed about 12 days now. And I would say, I've always said that the main thing our gym does, or any gym does, is have a social kind of gathering, and kind of it's there for the kind of mental health of people more so than any sort of workout. It's there for your head more than your body, in my view.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'm not sure everybody fully understands that, because they think that it's a very lonely thing when you go to the gym, but actually you're there beside people, you're there watching what other people are doing, you're there having a conversation with somebody, you're there being motivated by the fact that there's a society around this.
Yeah, there's two versions of gyms really. It's the gym where you go in and you just lift weights and you get on a treadmill and you just do it kind of for yourself just to get away for 45 minutes or the hour. But then there's the gyms where there's the class-based element to it, where it's basically like your own team. So we'd have the same people coming into us at 6:45 in the morning. You'd have the same group that come into you consistently at 5:15, 6:30. So they have their own little group there where they come in and they socially kind of just interact, and that's the most important part of the gym. And our job then is to make it fun and to have a bit of fun, to have a bit of crack with it. The lads put on good music, I put on crap music, but do have a bit of fun and just kind of make them feel part of it. And that's the biggest kind of. Now you have that taken away from people, but you've also the kind of social interaction. And Irish people were very sociable, as we know, and it's going to be a big struggle when we get back now for this time when we're closed away, but also when we get back to it when we're finished.
Yeah, we are very sociable, but we're not very honest or open when it comes to saying, yeah, actually, you know what, I am having a bit of difficulty at the moment, or I had a bad few days, or. I wonder if that's changing a little bit. We're sensing that more people are a bit more honest about, yeah, actually, you know what, I am having a bit of a struggle here. There's a global pandemic on, I'm locked in my house and I'm going a bit stir crazy. Certainly our friends are talking a bit more openly about that kind of stuff. I don't know if you've seen this from your customers or your friends or your mates or people you know.
Yeah, we do an awful lot of work with Mindspace here in Mayo and Mayo Mental Health Association, two great kind of organisations, and we actually do it through the GA with the Healthy Club. So we go out and we kind of push out a message called Moving Your Mind. So basically we encourage kind of people to exercise and the effect it has on your mind as well as your body. But the major thing it has, the biggest, I suppose, underestimation you can have in exercise is just your body. So yes, people are getting better at talking, but they also talk in a social way. We always communicate more than just talking. We communicate with our body. So if you're in there and you're in a class or you're socially interacting with people, sometimes you can see it from their body language as well, that maybe there's something wrong, and we can just have a chat around that as well. So I think it's a two-way street. We are getting better at talking, but when we're not socially interacting, it's a bit more of a struggle to get that done as well.
When you were getting into becoming a gym owner, and when you were kind of getting into like high-end fitness, was it initially just because you wanted to become a better Gaelic footballer? Was this all stuff that you learned as you went on that journey, or was this something that you were always interested in, kind of, you know, in your early 20s anyway? It's like, actually, you know, I can see the balance of the impact that exercise can have on people's lives. How did that process happen for you?
Yeah, well, I'd be totally. I wouldn't call myself an expert in anything. I'm kind of generally know a bit about everything, but I'm not an expert in anything in terms of particularly mental health. But when we first opened the gym, it was, I thought it'd be great for young people. I could see that they were getting into it. I had no idea the mental health aspect of it at all, if I'm being honest. And just as you go along, you go into a class there at 5:15 when people finished work, and you're trying to explain to people the moves that we're going to do in the class, and you can't hear yourself speaking because people are just talking. And then all of a sudden you just kind of, you see it through the kind of different lens of people. You see what's happening. Different people give you interaction that it's the gym is great for them. And then you start just kind of looking at it from a different perspective. So over the 5 years, I have really kind of changed my whole view on exercise. To me, like what we try to do in the movement is just kind of make it fun and make it an experience for people more so than the workout. Like we wouldn't be posting pictures of ourselves or clients or anything like that. We just come in, have a bit of fun and try to make it as comfortable for everyone in the place. And
I presume the response has been much better to the bit where you kind of have this more holistic approach to this being something that you're going to enjoy, that is going to have an impact on your physical health, but ultimately it's to make you feel better about yourself.
Yeah, and what it does, it gives people who wouldn't be normal gym goers the opportunity to come in, So we run the leisure complex at Lockdown there, the new swimming pool and gym in Castlebar as well, and that would be a completely different clientele. So you'd have people coming in there where they just want to work out by themselves, they're happy in their own company, but then down in our other class-based gyms, you'd have people just coming in, of all ages, of all abilities, and you just try to make it so you bring people in from all different areas,
Yeah.
And I will say it's not just us. There's an awful lot of people in Mayo and an awful lot of gyms doing an awful lot of good work that try to do the same kind of process, So
obviously this is devastating in terms of the long-term impact or the medium-term impact on your business. Did any of the announcements that the government made during the week, did that give you any comfort?
It does, of course, yeah. Everything helps in terms of, we were trying to keep the staff on anyway, for the period of time where we can afford it. But of course, that kind of helps us, and it's going to help the economy generate after it. So people now are all looking at the economic impact of now, the business, what's happening right now. It's when we've no disposable income, the far side of this is where we're going to, that's going to be the biggest struggle for businesses in my view. So if we can get people in and get them moving and get them spending money in the local community, that's going to create jobs and get people back moving quicker than if we didn't have the stimulus.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the stimulus was a moment where everybody kind of exhaled for the first time in a couple of weeks. It's like, okay, we're braced for the health issue, but alongside that there was, what is our lives going to look like for what happens next? And for the first time, it was like, okay, well, they are thinking about this, and they do have proper plans in place, and there are plans that are going to affect absolutely every single one of us, because there's no industry that works at the moment the way it did before the crisis happened. In terms of keeping your customers going, we had Philly McMahon on yesterday. He's obviously a gym owner in Dublin. He's running Zoom classes for people at different stages. Have you got to that point yet? Are you doing mass classes over video conferencing, or what are you doing?
Yeah, so we went at the route that, I suppose I'm a father of 2 kids, and I don't get a time in the day. My client base wouldn't really get a time in the day to say, right, plug in here at 11 o'clock, we'll do a live class and away we go. So what we did was we from last Thursday week on, we closed last Friday week. So from the day before that, we just started doing videos. So every one of my trainers started doing 20-minute videos. So we've got a kind of a library of videos that we're putting up every day. Now we're on day 10. If we get to day 40, I actually might be fit. But when we get to day 40, it could be a bit of a struggle. But we have a video going up every day, either a circuit class for 20 minutes or a yoga Pilates class every day. And it's just, we put it up on our social media channels and YouTube channels just to kind of, when people want to plug into it, they can just basically tune in and away they go.
Okay, and you hope obviously that customers continue to just interact with your gyms, that the relationship that you've built up over the last 5 years is something that will bring them back to you whenever this is all over.
Yeah, I think it's funny if you look at the times a day people come to the gym. Like our most popular times would be 6:45 in the morning and 5:15 in the evening. So it's that time before you go to work, just to give you a little bit of energy and to get in. Of course, it's convenient, but I think there's a bit more to it. I think it just kind of helps you with your focus and everything just before you go to work to get yourself going. And then that 5:15 in the evening, it's people rushing from work. That 45 minutes before they get home to their kids, and all of a sudden they give themselves a bit of energy too before they go home, So it's just that little gaps in the day where people fit it in. So again, when you're stuck at home, I suppose some people are single where they can do it at any time and they need that bit of energy as well. But some people have kids, and geez, if you can break for 20 minutes from the kids for 20 minutes, it's lovely. So we're only trying to provide that facility. Is it state-of-the-art genius stuff? It's not. It's a circuit class, 20 minutes, and we're just trying to keep us engaged as best we can.
Yeah, absolutely. On your social channels, do you want to tell us what those social channels are, so if anybody wants to subscribe to them or follow them?
Yeah, you just find them in the Movement Gym, Castlebar and Claremorris, and then the Lockdown Leisure Complex is there as well. So it's you just find them through myself, really. What
are you doing with your kids as a matter of interest? What advice do you have for frustrated parents out there who are tearing their hair out, who aren't maybe necessarily the greatest homeschoolers of all time? So what are you doing?
Well, I most certainly am not. I used to love that 8 o'clock time when you get the kids to bed, you have yourself settled and you sit down, but now you're just wrecked. My dad was a stay-at-home dad for 20 years, and even longer. I've never had more respect for the man in all my life as the last 2 weeks. So we're socially isolated now for about 10, 12 days, myself, my wife, and our 2 kids. And I go for my first walk at 8:15. You're killing my walk time, actually.
Sorry about that.
We do 3 to 4 walks a day. Myself and my little fella, he's 2, so you need to get him out of the house. And then it's just, there's a bit of schoolwork to do with Charlotte, who's 5, and then it's just outside, trying to play a bit of football. I'm looking out at a sand pit here. There's stuff coming in from the grandparents' house, everything. So we're just trying to keep it, but it's not. Let's not. It's lovely to spend the time with them, and it's lovely to get that time, because I probably haven't got that time with Ollie since he was born. But it's hard work.
It is, isn't it? And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they all socialise after this. This is definitely something that's going to have a medium-term impact on them, because they're especially the 5-year-old. Our 5-year-old hasn't seen any of her school friends. She's seen her older sister and her little brother, and sometimes they're getting on not so well, and then other times they're getting on great. But like, she would like to see her school friends. It's kind of something that you don't fully understand until you see how they're missing it.
Yeah, I see the impact. She's in junior infants, I'd say. Yeah. So when she's in junior infants, and the impact school has had on her socially, you know, in that 12 or in that 8, what are we, about 5 months in? So in that time, the impact it had socially and physically on her in terms of her, you know, she can run now, she can do everything, but now all of a sudden that's taken away. So it's going to be a huge loss to her. And she's always kind of asking. We've even 2 doors down, there's one of the girls in her class, and she can't even see her, so she can't fully understand it either, you know.
Yeah, no, totally. Hopefully, go on. Sorry.
How much do you think your former teammates are going to be missing the football at the moment, Andy? Just even the ability to go out and almost in a very similar way, if it's school friends or if it's teammates, if you're an adult that you played inter-county or club football with, that sense of camaraderie as much as anything else is a huge absence for a lot of people's lives at the moment.
Yeah, I can't see how it's working, if I'm being honest. I wasn't really missing it anyway, if I'm being honest with you. I hadn't really missed it to this point. I'm definitely not missing it now. I genuinely can't see how they're getting the level of work in that they need to get in. And that's everyone all over the country. I literally can't see it. I can't see any real, like, the enjoyment in playing county football is going in kind of competing against fellas of your own kind of ability, try to get the better of them and have a bit of camaraderie in the dressing room. That's what I found good. That's what I loved about it. Now that's all taken away. You know, it's I don't know how it's working for them. I don't really have the answer, if I'm being honest, but it's such an unusual experience. And I look at the guys who are the same age as myself. I better not put Keith Higgins the same age as myself. He's 2 years younger. But the likes of Clarkey and Keith a bit, and they might have been looking, Joe, that the careers are coming to the end of it, and it's an awful way. Maybe if people around the country are thinking this is my last year to play football, and this could be the last year that they get playing county football. But yeah, the health of the nation is way more important. But I think there is an element of I'd feel an awful lot. I feel sorry for the guys in the Olympics and guys that are playing county football and soccer and everything as well, just for the I suppose the competitive nature of them people.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, because we almost throw all of them in with the rest of the population, that, like, we talk about fitness at home and keeping the ticker going along and keeping the head fresh and all that sort of thing. But we forget that the high performance athletes in this country actually thrive off the drug that is competitive football or competitive sport if you're an Olympian. And I think we sometimes forget that there is no substitute for that right now. We can work out at home or go for a run or whatever, but you can't replicate that competitiveness at any point over the next couple of weeks or months.
No, you look at the Olympians there who are peaking in a four-year cycle to get ready for this summer, and it's just, you know, the amount of people I'm sorry now if I'm depressing anyone, but that could be injured in 12 months' time, or that could, you know, their cycle now is all like that is so tough for them guys, of course. You know, the most important thing here is like stemming the tide of the COVID-19 and flattening the curve. But there is an element of, in the sporting context, how difficult it's going to be for people to get to their peak performance.
There's talk of maybe a straight knockout being the best way to proceed with the football championship this year. It's very difficult to see anything else other than that, where it'll be run off over a 7 or 8 week period. And you know, we have to look forward and keep spirits up and think of the joy of what actually a championship like that might bring. Is that something that, as a player, you would have looked forward to and gone, yeah, well, look, I mean, obviously, assuming you have a couple of games to get fit, but like 8 weeks straight knockout, let's go.
Would have been out in May and June for the last 5 years. So there's a certain element of where you'd be excited by it. I think there's an awful lot to kind of work through. I genuinely don't know where we're going this year. I, like, very positive person, really missing sport in terms of watching it, like absolutely missing it to the. It's crazy how much I'm missing it, to be honest with you. But you look at the Champions League final being postponed. That's May 30th. You know, you look at the Olympics being pushed out a year. You know, like I was always saying, yeah, when will we run the championship, the senior championship? They'll go June, July. We don't know, lads. We're in a situation now where, like, when could it be run? I don't know. You're putting 40, 50,000 people into a stadium. Is it going to be 30 males in a dressing room with background team in a dressing room at the same time? This is going to be difficult to run now. Fingers crossed, I'm praying that it goes ahead and the club stuff goes ahead and all that. But now I'm at the point where I'm thinking, is it a possibility at all? You know, and if it does run, straight knockout. It'd probably have to be. They definitely can't go tier 1, tier 2 because the leagues aren't finished. I think that's what. But in terms of time, this is going to be tricky, I think, for the GAA and the wider community.
Yeah, it could be a September, October thing. Like it could be as far back as that, where I mean, the point you ask about 40,000 people in a stadium, I'm not sure we're going to see that for a while. Like, it's probable that we're going to have social distancing at stadiums. It's possible that we're going to have social distancing for a long period of time. And how you would find a team, like, does everybody on the team have to have had COVID-19, and we at that stage have to be sure that they all have antibodies, and so they're not going to be at risk of reinfection? There are a lot of unanswered questions, really, when it comes to when we can get back to any kind of normality. I
think it's a great advantage of us being an amateur sport, where, of course, there's commercial interest there as well, but it's less so. We're not as reliant on them, so it's a great advantage of it. So we can kind of play with the dates and the times and how we need to do it. If we need stadiums half full, we can definitely kind of play around with it a tiny bit. If it does get playing in a weird sort of way, it could sort out a lot of the calendar for the GAA. We're looking at it for the last while. If club leagues go ahead, they'll definitely have to play without county players, which probably should have been done a long time ago, where you can just run the league off during the summer for the club players and then be ready to go September, October. So it could solve an awful lot of problems. The backdoor system, a Champions League system, these things that we're talking about, it actually gives them a chance to put them out there. So there's a lot of good things that could come out of this in terms of football and GAA, but when it's going to be played, I do not know. Yeah, okay. The GAA said that they hope to give teams a fortnight heads up before they actually do play any games. So, I mean, the point you're making about it being very difficult for players to stay fit, some random stuff is going to happen if there is a championship this year. Some team might come out of nowhere. Some teams might flop compared to where they might have been. And it's the teams who are training, who are capable of getting the mind space, I suspect, in the moment to go off and train and be an individual and yet be part of a team, be connected to a team. The little connection then between, I suppose, the amateur side of it as well. You have people working all over the country. Like, how busy are you going to be when you get back to work? It's there's going to be hours there. There's going to be, you're going to be chasing your tail there for a couple of weeks as well. Guys need to get themselves around the country to train and little things like that. And you have a 2-week period. It's going to be tough. Yeah, it's going to be wild. Off the couch is our little bit of trying to get everybody that little bit of fitness and health and help. It's to try and get people to stay fit and get people to get fit. What are you doing for us today, Andy? Yeah, so our class is just a circuit class, similar to what we do in every class. So it's just 5 moves. You're working at a 40-second period. You'd probably have to go 20, but everyone else will be working 40 seconds. You have 20 seconds of rest, and you're just doing that 3 times. It'll bring you around 15, 16 minutes. Do a 4-minute warm-up, and away you go. But it's basically just to get a bit of energy into yourself. Like what we always say is, get moving any way you can. If it's I don't mind how it is. Walk, run, cycle, do a circuit class, whatever. There's plenty of resources there online. Just go and try to push it out there as best you can. All right, so The Movement is the name of the gym, and you can search for that on all your social media channels? Yeah, so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and then we have a YouTube channel there as well, so that people can access the videos. Well, best of luck. It goes live this afternoon for us on the Off the Ball channels. Stay safe, Andy. Thanks a million for joining us. Thanks, guys. Talk soon. That's Andy Moran giving us some thoughts there and a bit of advice about what's happening. Owen, how's your exercising coming along? Superbly. Absolutely superbly. Look at me, the picture of health. Where's your Joe Wicks style footage? You're going to be doing it topless like Joe Wicks, right? Of course. Like, I mean, is there anything I don't do? Is there any task I don't perform in life like that guy? We're missing our swimming. I presume you're particularly missing it as well, considering you had just got to Michael Phelps level. Yeah, I was vaguely thinking about trying to swim in the sea, but not just convinced about the water quality in Dollymount. Floating on a bed of human shit doesn't really appeal to me that much. How did that sound? Down the country, there are places outside of Dublin that you can drive your car to. There are, but I live in Dublin. That's my nearest bit to swim in the sea. Right, let's move on. 8:43 this morning. Here is Irish football writer in Italy, Paddy Agnew, talking about the stark situation in Bergamo, the city north of Milan with a population of 120,000, and whether Atalanta and Valencia's Champions League tie contributed to the grave situation there. I spoke last week to a mate of mine, Carla Calvanese, who writes for L'Eco di Bergamo, which is the local
paper in Bergamo, and Bergamo is the centre, the epicenter of this epidemic. And he said, and we move into football here, because he said, he's a football writer. For the last 3 or 4 years of the Atalanta fairy tale and their rise to the quarterfinals of the Champions League, the support for the club in the town was just fantastic. It's a 120,000 town, but when they played Valencia in the second round first leg game, like 40,000 of them, that's a third of the town, travelled down to Milan to watch the game, because the Atalanta are at the moment playing the Champions League games in the San Siro in Milan, because they're doing a renovation job on their own stadium in Bergamo. But what Carla was saying to me was, that at that time, while that was going on, to an awful lot of people, it seemed like it was the most important thing in the world. And the sense of buzz about the town was just incredible. But he says that's changed. He said nobody's buzzing now. He said there's one town in Italy where nobody's out on their balconies singing, and that's Bergamo. Yeah. I mean, the rate there, the mortality rate, is just too high. But Joe, let me tell you one other thing. It's very, very interesting, and again, it's football linked. And it is that one of the senior doctors at the Giovanni XXIII Hospital here in Bergamo, he's convinced that Champions League first leg home tie in Milan that I just mentioned, that was basically what he called a biological bomb. Because what happened was that 40,000 Bergamo fans all travelled down to the match together. They celebrated a bit before, they celebrated a bit afterwards, they came home, and what they didn't realise was that a lot of them were infected, because at that point, at the time that match was played on the 19th of February, not a single person had died in Italy. 3 weeks later, 333 people died in 1 week in Bergamo. So, and what the scientists now believe, what the medics now believe, is that an awful lot of those people are carriers. They went to that match, and then they came home, and they went, and a lot of Italian families live in a very extended family unit, and they brought home a lot of infection to a lot of old people, and a lot of old people have accordingly died. And it's in keeping with that. And speaking to the Mayor Gorey today, when we asked him about that match, he said he doesn't know whether or not. He said there are other reasons why the virus spread so fast and so vigorously in Bergamo, but that has certainly been a major reason. And he looks at. He said another thing on spontaneously. He said he cannot understand how important countries, Britain and the USA in particular, he mentioned, how come they haven't learned from the Italian experience? Italy was the first country to be hit. Italy's ahead of the curve in that sense. Look at what's happened in Italy and realise that one thing you can't do is have mass gatherings. You can't, and the Italians didn't know that at the time of the Atalanta-Valencia game. They know it now. Yeah. And he himself, the mayor, he has 2 daughters studying in England. And when he saw that the British authorities were happy to have England play Wales at Twickenham in front of 80,000, or to have 250,000 racing people at Cheltenham for 4 days, he rang his daughters immediately and said, come home. You'll be safer here than you will be in a country like that. This is the mayor. Because, all the best advice from the Chinese, the South Koreans, now the Italians, is lockdown means lockdown, and it certainly means no mass gatherings, no gatherings at all, let alone ones of 250,000 people. That seems like pure madness. And if you look at the Valencia, the Atalanta-Valencia game, nothing happening at the time that they go to the match. But if you catch the virus, it takes about 5 to 6 days to incubate. Then it takes about 2 weeks to work its course to the point where you're very sick and you recover, or you're very sick and you die. And that's, if you take those 3 week periods from that first game, You get to the week when 333 people died in Bergamo. That boom they're absolutely convinced is linked. And as I say, people here look at that and think, shutdown means shutdown.
Pretty chilling stuff from Paddy Agnew, who is a brilliant journalist and has been for 4 or 5 decades reporting on life in Italy. And he's been a regular on the show over the last while. And he's talking about Game Zero there. Awful, awful stuff to consider that the north of Italy is never really going to be the same again after what they've been through. And who knows? Spain seems to be on a fairly similar path at the moment. The UK and America, and we're just hoping that we somehow manage to swerve that curve. It's 8:50 this morning here on OTBM. If you want to get in touch with us, 087 180 180 is the number you can WhatsApp to us. We've got Will O'Callaghan live on the line with us this morning to talk to us about some of the other stories that are happening around the world at the moment. The IOC are coming in for criticism for running the boxing qualifiers in London. It's not entirely dissimilar to what the mayor of Bergamo was saying. Why is this happening? And getting his kids home. 3 Turkish boxers will have been confirmed contaminated with COVID-19.
Yeah, that's correct, Jerry. Yeah, 3 members of the Turkish team who returned home after the event was postponed on last Monday have now tested positive for COVID-19. So I think probably understandably, the Turkish chairperson of their boxing federation has pretty much put the IOC on blast this morning. It's reported by The Guardian that he has said that they showed a lack of responsibility toward the athletes who were taking part because, as he has put it, it's well known that COVID-19 was on the spread, and particularly in Britain before the event took place. And he said it was irresponsible for the IOC and the British government to allow that event to take place at all. It did get underway for a few days. Brendan Irvine qualified as part of it, and 9 more of the Irish team are still in contention to qualify for the Olympics at that European leg of the qualifiers, which are unlikely to take place now until at least the end of May. They've all returned home. There's no reports of any of the Irish team having picked up COVID-19 at the event, but a lot of concern over the fact that it went ahead at the Copper Box Arena in London. And even the European boxing president had said before it took place that there was a high risk of transmission as well, and he wasn't 100% sure if it should have went ahead. And now we've had this report of the 3 Turkish boxers having picked up COVID-19 and one of the coaches as well. So interesting to see how this proceeds, and interesting to see how the IOC respond as well. The Guardian say they've been in contact, but the IOC are waiting for more detail to come back.
That's a good way of kicking to touch. We had obviously Kelly Harrington on the show a little bit earlier on in the week, and she was saying that she's been self-isolating since she came back. You would hope that everybody else who was on that trip from an Irish perspective are doing the same, given now that there have been cases confirmed. It was a fairly obvious thing. You bring a lot of people from around the world, you put them in a ring together to fight, you put them in bleachers together waiting for their compatriots to fight, and you put them all in shared changing rooms over a short period of time. Not exactly the worst place for a virus to look at and go, yeah, I'm gonna have some fun here, lads.
Yeah, I'm really surprised it went ahead at all, because it's one of those things where we had gone past the point of some of the events that went ahead maybe when the spread hadn't moved hugely in England as yet, in terms of, say, Atletico Madrid playing their game away from home against Liverpool at Anfield, where perhaps the bigger issue was the amount of fans coming from Madrid who were potentially carrying COVID-19, given that there were hundreds of cases in the Spanish capital at the time. There was still a very low rate of positive tests in England at the time when Cheltenham started. Obviously, we saw how maybe the narrative around Cheltenham changed, and I were talking to Barry Geraghty about that last Friday. But even before the boxing got underway the weekend before last, there was a real feeling that it was unlikely to get completed even when it got started, and ultimately that's how it played out. And we only got first couple of rounds played before they made that decision ultimately last Monday to postpone until at least the end of May.
Justin Rose has been talking. What's he been saying?
Yeah, he's been talking about the qualification process, Ger, for the Ryder Cup later this year. We still expect it to go ahead at Whistling Straits in September. And he's saying particularly because the first 2 majors of this year, the PGA Championship and the Masters, being lost, with a huge amount of qualification points that are on hand for that. And Graham McDowell's been talking as well today that he's very unsure about what's going to happen with him playing in the Masters, because he currently sits 1 place inside the Magic 50. He's sitting in 49th currently. But let's say if the season gets back underway in June and the Masters is not played until maybe August or September, there is that chance that Graham McDowell mightn't get to go to the Masters now. But Justin Rose has been saying that because it's just such an unusual year, because of the PGA Tour and the European Tour being suspended at the moment, and nobody is picking up qualifying points at a very important stage of the season, he feels it would be unfair to have a 12-week period where there potentially could be 2 Masters, a series of other major tournaments taking place at the same time, and then a race to try and qualify for the European team. Justin Rose has been a 5-time member of the European team at the Ryder Cup, 4 times a winner as well. And basically his suggestion is that Padraig Harrington should now be given 8 wildcard picks, that the captain should pretty much be allowed to pick their entire team. So scrap the qualifying and allow Harrington to pick his team as he feels fit.
Right, an interesting, and then it would be very, very pressurised situation for the 2 Ryder Cup captains. We're like, okay, so you're not playing very well at the moment, but like you're a 5-time, somebody who has proven to be very competitive, who really likes the Ryder Cup, and all of a sudden it's like, I've got to pick you, or I can pick the guy who's just won a tournament that hasn't given him enough points because the points don't matter anymore. What do you do?
Yeah, and Justin Rose was quite honest as well, Ger, when he said, look, realistically, he's outside of contention at the moment. It would probably suit him quite well if Harrington could give him a text or a call and pick him for the Ryder Cup team. Be interesting to see what happens from an Irish perspective as well, because only a few weeks ago, Harrington was saying how well Graham McDowell has been playing, and maybe he might have to reassess whether McDowell is going to be a vice-captain for the Ryder Cup or to play. But obviously, all of this is based around things happening in Whistling Straits on the last weekend in September. There's no guarantee the tournament will actually go ahead.
There's also a situation here where you've got an 8-month window where you could have the Ryder Cup, 4 golf majors, next year's Masters, and potentially the Olympic Games golf tournament as well, if that goes for a springtime slot. So it's going to be an incredible few months for golf players. If you are on form and you're on a hot streak for that 8 months, it could be a career-defining few months for you, I would have thought.
Yeah, potentially, Owen. And the thing is, I know there's obviously very important video conference call meetings taking place with the IOC task force today, and 33 of the federations, and they're due to talk to athletes, sponsors and broadcasters, I think, over the next couple of days as well. All indications are this morning that the Olympics will take place in the spring as opposed to the summer next year in Tokyo. So as you say, there's going to be a very interesting switch up of the sporting schedules and the calendar when all this comes through with COVID-19. And there's a possibility, not just in terms of golf, we could see a very packed schedule with multiple events all being packed into this winter and into next spring as well.
What's the latest on the GEA, Will?
Yeah, Fergal McGill, the games officer, was speaking this morning, and effectively 1 game is lost. We know at this stage we've lost London against Roscommon in the opening round of the Connacht Senior Football Championship. Based on what Fergal McGill was saying this morning as well, it seems no chance that the National Football and Hurling Leagues will be completed. He said the GAA are currently working with a very tentative date of June the 15th for resumption, and that would include a 2-week period for teams to try and prepare to be ready for June the 15th as well. The knock-on effect to that, particularly in terms of the hurling championships, will be big. The round-robin series, which we've seen in the last couple of years in Munster and Leinster, will be dropped in favour of a straight knockout tournament. The reason that they want to do that is to make sure that the All-Ireland finals can be played as close as possible to the current dates at the end of August, and perhaps maybe pushing back into early September. They want that to happen to enable a club season to take place, because there is a bit of extra pressure on the club championship now, given the games won't have been played in April in the designated club month, where many counties were intending to play club championship. He said that maybe it's a little bit easier with amateur sport than with professional sport in terms of redrawing things and maybe reorganising the championship, but in all likelihood we're looking at knockout championship. And I think the impression I got from listening to Fergal McGill as well was that he thinks maybe June the 15th might even be slightly optimistic. So there's going to be big changes. I think the lower grade competitions in hurling are likely to all change from round robin to knockout as well. Very unlikely that they could be played off in such a quick period of time. So we are looking at that possible seismic changes to the championship. Football championship staying as it is at the moment, but I think definitely the hint that there could be massive changes to the provincials as well.
We kind of need to see what the contingency plans are, so that, like, even as a thought experiment, to see what football might look like in a truncated season, because there have been calls in the past for the intercounty season to be truncated, to be a short 2.5, 3 month short sharp shock, a festival of football. This was one of Pat Gilroy's central planks when he was applying for the Director General's gig, apparently, that the club is the most important, the be-all and end-all, and they release players to the intercounty scene, and then you have this festival in summertime or early autumn, and that's when the big games and the big intercounty matches are played. But that isn't the be-all and end-all. That the whole season isn't built around a very long intercounty season where the players are constantly training for playing very few matches. So it might be interesting to see exactly what that would look like if it was over a 2.5, 3 month period. I'm surprised that they're still pushing for the August, early September, because there's just a stricture around that. Most counties, if it's knockout, are going to be able to play club championship the next week. Like, it's not like it's going to be a ton of teams who are going late into the championship. Is it?
I suppose realistically, sorry, they're probably not going to have a situation whereby they can't get the club championships back underway pretty quickly. I guess it's going to be down to individual counties and the fixture makers there to come up with a plan now where if you can say, right, well, by the end of July or early August, if our teams are out, and in all likelihood the Tailteann Cup is gone now at this stage as well, so that will mean that more football teams by the very nature will be knocked out of the championship a little bit earlier. So you'd imagine that should free up a gap.
I think it would look bad if the GEA are automatically saying, well, we can just compress the club championship and let's just expand the amount of time we can play our inter-county championship. I think that the club player has had enough time in the shadows over the last couple of years. The decisions have always been made favouring the inter-county game for the last few years. That's fine. It is the money spinner for the organisation. So I think it would be a bad look if they automatically jumped in and said, let's just compress the club season. What I do think they need to do, however, is park this idea of getting the club championships played within the calendar year and the progression of that for this year. I think perhaps it should go the other way and perhaps revert to a later All-Ireland Club Football Championships and perhaps free up a fortnight or 3 weeks here or there, so that you will then allow the inter-county All-Ireland finals to perhaps go back to the first and third weeks or the second and third weeks of September and then go from there. And we are then operating off a calendar where we were, say, 2-3 years ago. And it doesn't seem as alien to some county boards when they try and run after club championships.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that and maybe talk to some county boards about what they might actually think will happen next and trying to find the sweet spot where the tension of the club players, the need for the country to see some inter-county GAA action, and obviously the public health issues. Obviously, a lot has to happen between now and then for us to even get into the prospect of what a match might look like. Will there be fans in the stadium? All that kind of stuff. So we can talk about that again. Will, in times of great global crisis, massive outpourings of creativity have happened. You think of the great jazz musicians between World War I and World War II, and I think we've got our own version of that here on Off the Ball. Yourself and Richie McCormick have had a meeting of minds, and you've come up with the first great opus of the coronavirus as far as Off the Ball is concerned. What have you done?
We've set up a wrestling podcast, Ger. Generally, we were giving out about the state of modern wrestling quite a bit when we were sitting beside each other in the office. So, and now that COVID-19 has put us into remote locations, we decided to continue the conversation in a podcast which we're calling Off the Top Rope, which we're going to look at WWE and AEW, the current product, quite a bit in the podcast. I'm not sure I was totally on board with watching 10 hours of wrestling a week, but Richie McCormick has just sent me links for both of last night's shows, NXT and AEW. So I'm going to have to do the homework ahead of our recording for our second podcast this evening. We have our first one up already on YouTube and on the Off the Ball website, which reviews this week's Raw. It's a very unusual time, lads, for particularly WWE, because usually this is their money-making period of the year. We're in WrestleMania season, and they're having a most unusual WrestleMania this year. It's going to be across 2 nights. They're doing their best to put a brave face on this, but it's been a big climb down from Vince McMahon over the last month. He went to the Tampa Bay officials to try and continue WrestleMania to be there. A bit like Tom Brady, WrestleMania was due to go to Tampa Bay. They were set to have a massive stadium show, but instead, for the first time in 15 years, we're not going to have a stadium show for WrestleMania. It's going to take place primarily at their training center, and they've pushed it across the Saturday and Sunday because I think they've had a fairly stark realization while having to fill shows for their massive TV deals with both Fox Sports and the USA Network that they've had to have less than 10 people in attendance at their filmings, and they've had to have social distancing as well. So wrestling has played out like a Beckett play over the last few weeks, with the wrestling taking place in the ring and no supporters being there. So it's been very unusual having it without a crowd. I think they've slowly but surely started to learn the lesson from the reaction to some of their shows where it looked absolutely farcical on SmackDown and Raw. And they're going to actually have to pre-record large swathes of WrestleMania as well. So we're in very uncertain times, and a very unfortunate time for WWE as well, because their share price was at $97 not that long ago when they announced the $2 billion deal with Fox. I think you can buy WWE shares now at around $30 a share. So a lot of money has been wiped off. And Vince McMahon on the personal level has lost quite a bit of money with the XFL this year as well. This was meant to be the preparing season for the TV deals in year 2 and year 3. And the COVID-19 crisis has caused the XFL season to be cancelled early as well. And they still had to pay the players all their regular season wages, and they got their bonuses as well. So estimated that Vince McMahon may well have lost a couple of $100 million this year, which is double what he lost when the XFL bombed back in 2001.
Are they actually touching each other in the ring, or when you say it's a back and play? Because, you know, they could do it. It would be pretty amazing to see them wrestle without actually, with the social distancing in the ring. I mean,
that might be even more entertaining if they had to stay 2 meters away from each other. But no, they have been touching off each other. There's been quite a few changes. They're in the training center, which is more like effectively it's a small gym that they've kitted out with a few Titantrons and different bits and pieces to make it look like a TV show, just purely so they can facilitate that and not lose the money from their TV deal. They've had to cut their commentator booth down from 4 people down to 2, and there's a lot of either pre-recorded segments taking place at the moment or a kickback to classic matches. So they're struggling. This is where, particularly with Raw, where they've got a 3-hour network TV show to be filled every week, they just have had problems with travel restrictions for wrestlers as well. They've been making a lot up on the fly, but they have, interestingly enough, for anyone who actually looks at the podcast for this week, we've kind of taken a look at some of the small changes that they've had to make to try and adapt during this period. But there's no doubt that this is going to be a very costly period as well, lads, for independent wrestling as well, because a lot of the independent wrestlers around the WrestleMania week probably make around 60% of their checks for the year, because everyone runs shows in the area around where WrestleMania is due to take place, and that's been cancelled. Even here in Ireland, we've been very heavily affected by OTT, the Irish promotion, losing out their biggest show of the year, where the AEW champion Jon Moxley was due to wrestle as well. That was due to take place a couple of Saturdays ago at the National Boxing Stadium. Unfortunately, they had to lose it too. So it's been a very difficult period for wrestling, but the big company just continues to trundle on the road to WrestleMania, and they try and claim it's too big for one night.
Well, great stuff. Thanks a million. We're going to play everybody a clip of Off the Top Rope now. You can subscribe to it on our podcast feed on the OTB Podcast Network. Get on to that over there. Subscribe to highlights. We'll stick some of it up there. And you can also, have you got it your own podcast strand just yet, or is it being belched out just on highlights at the moment?
It's in production, Ger. I reckon by the time we get episode 2 up later on, it should be in its own feed.
Okay, all right, good stuff. After that, we're going to come back and we're going to get the situation in New York. We're going to speak with James Kennedy, who is the founder and owner of Rugby United New York, the team which is heavily Irish influenced. Had Matthew Bastareaud and a bunch of Irish players playing for them this year. That league season has been truncated. And Johnny Kennedy from the Long Hall pub, who's a regular contributor here on the show, has given us that beautiful picture that is always over Owen's shoulder when he's in studio as well, to find out what the construction industry is happening to the hospitality industry, both industries which are obviously heavily influenced by the Irish in New York, and what impact that's had on the Irish community. We're going to get to that after we bring you this, which is Off the Top Rope, Will O'Callaghan and Richie McCormick's magnum opus. Have a look.
This week was a big improvement on the week before, because we had a full Royal Rumble match shown a couple of weeks ago in order to just pad it out so they could make their 3-hour runtime. And maybe some lessons can be learned for WWE over the last few weeks as well. One of the key ones being that it's very difficult to fill a 3-hour show and keep it entertaining. And when it comes to the booth, like you mentioned, it was a 2-man booth for the best part with Todd Phillips and with Byron Saxton. I was actually quite happy when I didn't see Jerry Lawler walk out at the start. I much prefer a 2-man booth anyway.
Yeah, the thing about it was when they cut to, and we'll get to that in a moment as well, when they cut to that Mania match from 5 years ago, it wasn't a Rumble match, wasn't it?
Royal Rumble, yeah.
With Lesnar and Cena and Seth Rollins. And the first thing that jumped out at me was, oh Christ, JBL's on commentary. JBL is on commentary. No. And then Lawler chimes in, I'm like, no, this is terrible. Because, oh my God, Mago. He's Big Match John. That was the last thing I wanted to hear.
It was also peak JBL as well, because when they were meant to be building up the show and telling some kind of story, JBL came out with his classic line, which sounded like it could be from the SmackDown versus Raw video games, when he goes, "This match is going to be fun."
Yeah, and I remember distinctly hearing that as well, because I think I was a network subscriber by that stage, and I was making sure that I was getting the pay-per-views watched at least anyway, to kind of keep tabs on what was going on. And that jumped out at me at the time. I was like, oh God, I despise that. There are many reasons why I dislike that man. His politics are one of them. The fact that he'll share photos of himself with Nigel Farage is another. I don't know if you've seen that one yet.
Or his search history when he's looking up muscular naked women while pay-per-views are on.
that has happened before. We're not just making that up for those watching in. JBL is a questionable character, to say the least. But yeah, I could do without him. I think the two-man booth works well. I think Saxton and Phillips are fine. I don't think at this stage you want anybody intrusive or, I guess, stealing the show or being disinterested if you're looking to be JR over in AEW. I think they've gotten the commentary booth just a bit right. Now, no doubt they'll manage to foul that up by the time WrestleMania weekend rolls around in 12 days' time. But yeah, I think they're, as I say, generally they're getting it about as right as they can given the circumstances.
Yeah, the other thing that's unusual is obviously we had the tagline which they're now using, which is a WrestleMania that's too big for one night for the first time ever, and so on, to try and hide over the fact that they're going to have to pre-record vast swathes of this, and it's for the best part going to be at a performance centre with no fans there. Is that they seem to have no idea yet about the scheduling, and that came across in quite a few of the promos as well, more than once. I know AJ Styles definitely said this. He said, I don't care if I'm on the Saturday night or on the Sunday night. It just feels really weird.
It does. There's bits and pieces coming out that apparently Becky and Shayna are going to headline the Saturday night, but I think the fact that they've been forced through the cancellation of the Hall of Fame and NXT's takeover program essentially being moved to this Wednesday, they've said that they've basically done what they should have been doing anyway, because what we had the last few years, especially in the big stadium shows with Mania, were these like 7-8 hour long marathons, and I actually went from being envious of people who were attending Manias to almost feeling sorry for them, because how you could stick through that much outdoors in a stadium with that many other sweaty people, and just there's no natural rhythm then to a show, because if you look back at an old pay-per-view, whether it's one of the old Starcades or something, or whether it's a Mania, there's a certain ebb and flow to it. You kind of have your up match, you bring people down with a bit of an entertainment or a bit of a comedy match, and then you kind of try and build them back up again towards a crescendo towards the finish. But you look at Mania matches, especially the main events in the last couple of years, you can see like this empty swathes of stadium where people are just kind of gone, oh, do you know what? I'm better off beating traffic, or I'm better off getting a subway out of here and heading home, or I'm better off, just basically not entertaining this because I've been here for 8 hours. I'm knackered. So spreading it out over 2 nights, doing essentially what New Japan did with Wrestle Kingdom in January, this seems like the right idea, and maybe one that they might want to stick to. Like we talked about this on the news round on Monday or Tuesday night as well, about how the championship in football could find itself falling arse backwards into a situation that actually is going to be the most entertaining and what everybody would like to see, which is a straight knockout. And again, with WrestleMania, I think they've found a formula by which they can, base WrestleManias going forward when they finally get them back outdoors.
Yeah, because even like watching on TV last year in terms of WrestleMania, you had your big emotional moment a few hours into the show. I think it was about 3 hours in, where Kofi Kingston wins, and there's a massive crowd interaction at that point, and a relief that a storyline has actually paid off. And the energy is just gone for the rest of the night. I think that really affected the main event last year. Like even rewatching it a few weeks ago, flat as a pancake for that all-women's final match.
Even if you go back to like Mania 18, where the biggest scheduling mishap they had ever was
Rock Hogan in the wrong place.
Go after Rock and Hogan, which like everybody just wanted to see. That was the main attraction for everybody there. Nobody gave fiddlers, because A, the story wasn't that strong anyway, and B, I think everybody was already at that thought of Triple H as being part of the creative team, and that he wanted to have the spotlight and go out last, and that was all his call, yada yada yada, and they paid for it big style that night. But I think Mania's too long, and has been for a couple of years, and last year I think was the most piss takery of its durations, and I think they've finally found a way to get it right, albeit completely by accident, and it gives a chance for everybody to shine. I mean, when they talk about multiple headliners, like nobody ultimately cares about maybe one or two of the 3 headliners that they announce. Whereas now, if they come out next week and say Becky and Shayna are headlining on the Saturday, we'll have Goldberg and Roman Reigns headlining on the Sunday, you've got something for everybody to point towards there, and you've got something to build around, and as I say, an ebb and flow to kind of build up throughout the course of the pay-per-view.
Yeah, the only thing I guess before we start breaking down the show from Monday night is it is going to be very unusual. I know we are kind of getting a little bit conditioned for this in terms of what we've seen the last few weeks, just filling out Raw and SmackDown, and it's been true of NXT without a crowd as well. Without that crowd interaction, which is fairly key to WrestleMania, do we almost put an asterisk beside WrestleMania that this isn't even going to feel like one?
Yeah, I do. I know. I'm speaking to you in the office about it last week. You're kind of like, oh, it's going to be fine. But it's not the same. You need that crowd interaction. You need the sense of big story arcs paying off and the crowd reaction to go along with that. And there just isn't that sense when, like, you could hear at one point last night that during the commentary when Street Profits were on the desk, they were essentially shouting down. Zelina Vega was having a back and forth between the two of them. We were like, that shouldn't happen. Like, in fairness, it was entertaining. But you're going to lead a lot of moments like that whereby there's more interaction and more awareness that they are in a strange situation and the reasons for it to make this actually work. But I don't think it could do. Like, we'll get to what the Boneyard match will probably mean in a minute. But yeah, it needs a lot of creativity to pull this one off.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station. OTB Sports Radio.
We've got a panel who know a thing or two about being trailblazers.
Paul Rouse, sport was already kind of impeded upon.
Sinead Kassan.
There's an innate interest in it anyway.
Dermot Lang, it didn't blow me away with him.
Jason Sherlock and Kieran Donaghy with us.
Basketball would have been my main game.
Retro panel for you now.
This is OTB Sports Radio. The Retro Panel. Wednesdays and Thursdays from 4. OTB AM.
Right, we wanted to get the view from New York. Regular viewers are going to know James Kennedy from Rugby United New York. Equally, people are going to know the name Johnny Kennedy from regular messages to the show and the purveyor of this fine piece of art, which I've temporarily plundered from the office. James, I'm going to start with you. The rugby season obviously was blown up and has been annulled. From a Rugby United perspective, what has this whole experience been like?
Listen, it's frustrating. I feel really bad for the players. Likes of Matthew and Marshy, who won't be coming back next year, and they were just starting to find form. The last game against San Diego, they were really starting to click. So I feel really bad for them. But then, in the context of what's going on, my problems are very much first world problems, right? So we have 328 days to our next league game. So that's 328 days to work on onboarding my new CEO, finding a commercial person, all the stuff that you and me, Ger, have talked about in the past that's now moving forward. We were lucky. We were about to put a big lease on an office, so we could pull off that because we don't need an office right now. So yeah, there's so much we can do in the downturn. I just feel really bad for the players. Those guys that are moving on, and like Matthew's still here. He's like, what can I do to help? Like, he feels really bad, So that's the part that's disappointing.
What's life actually like in New York at the moment then?
It's quiet. I went around on a motorcycle yesterday. I'll be going around again today because we do have some work going on. Limited on the construction side. It's very quiet. It's eerie. I mean, Johnny will tell you, even if Johnny could be open, all his clients are not going into the city, so because there's no one there. The buildings are empty. I was in a building yesterday. Its regular occupancy is 2,400. There was 20 people in the building. So people are shutting down, rightly so, staying isolated. So yeah, it's weird, and it's like everybody, like the guys in Ireland, like you guys, it gets a bit frustrating being at home all the time, right, Johnny? It's a bit like the walls start to close in a little bit, right?
Oh my God.
So, and then developing new routines and new habits. So, yeah.
Johnny, you're public and new on the long haul in New York City, a popular haunt amongst Irish people. A lot of people are going to know it who are listening and watching to us. What has your experience been? How quickly did they move from, this is grand, this is going to be fine, it's just a flu, to, oh shit, let's lock everything down?
Yeah, on bar terms for us, it was pretty scary because we were actually on the verge of opening another spot on the Monday. And I mean, up to Sunday night, I was like, yeah, we're going to open. And I even had a young kid out from Atalanta working for us, and he literally come over 2 weeks before. But I literally thought up to the night before, yeah, we're going to open. And it literally went that quick. That was Sunday evening. And then by Monday morning, because Connor's actually involved with us, Connor Moore, and he was ringing me going, are you going to open? And then it just went like that. And I mean, we were boarding up the doors the next day. Like, that is scary. It looked like a hurricane, like Katrina thing had kind of come in. All the bars putting boards up. I seen it in the Palace in Dublin. It's just ridiculous. Like I can't really. I think the biggest effect is going to be when we open. Everyone thinks, oh, you get open in a couple of weeks, it's going to be fine. After that, their staff are gone. They really are. Like, I didn't think that happened. There's people gone back to Ireland, have moved home, they've gone back. There's people in self-quarantine. Like, they've gone home rather than sit in self-quarantine for, 2 weeks, rather than stay here and fight out. And I don't blame them. Sure, there's the uncertainty. They don't know what's coming. Some of them mightn't be documented, you know?
I think, Johnny, that's the difference between what you have to go through because your cash flow is gone. On the construction side, we've guaranteed incomes for everybody, at least for the next 3 months. And on the rugby side, we're paying out the players all their contracts probably next week. Even the hourly players are getting their contracts as if they played through June. But it's a different cash model, right? So, you know, as I said, you need that. You need those tills ringing every night. So
yeah. And then you have also have the problem probably on your end as well, James, like where you're going to see, you know, are people going to pay their bills, you know, in the contracting end? You know, that's where yous are going to be. Like, I think the long-term effect of this in the months to come down the road, when you're chasing up bills and when you're stuff like that, and for us, where's the tourists going to be? Is there any tourists going to be in town? Highly unlikely. Corporate America, they're not going to be spending money. So the bar trade will suffer. Like, so landlords are looking for money. They're going to look for money. Eventually, they'll freeze it. They'll freeze for the first 2 or 3 months, but eventually they're going to want their money straight away, but you're not going to have the customers straight away. So, like, I know they did this stimulus package today of 2 trillion, but like, where is that going to trickle down to the landlord, to the tenant, to the bartender, to the customer? It's going to be tough. You know, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I think New York would be the best place to be as regards people coming back, and customers will be amazing. But that will only get you so far. I think it'll be, the effects of this will be in the 3 and 4, 6 months down the road. I think you'll see a lot of bars closing. You know, already there's bars closed. I know of 2 bars that they just walked away. You know,
I can't recall, but there's it's not the Peninsula, but one of the bigger hotels went bankrupt just last week. It closed down for good.
Yeah. It's scary times for staff and for people like that. Like, you know, when they're all leaving the country already, you know, that's their first option. And I don't blame them. You know, but I wouldn't rather be anywhere else. And this is my home anyway. It's not like, you know, people say, would you go home? Like, well, I am home. I'm not going. My brother's across the hall. Me and my wife are here. It ain't going to change. I'm not going anywhere.
The other side of that is we still have players here like Matthew. We have 2 Irish guys still here. And their attitude was, well, they want to stay and help. But it's like, if I go to Paris, if I go to London, if I go to Dublin, I'm still locked down. So what's the difference, you know, really at the end of the day? So, yeah, it's interesting. And just on the revenue, you know, we're pretty much writing off 70% of our sponsorship income, which is a lot of income for us because we know we just won't be able to collect it. I mean, we've only played 4 games. You know, they're not going to get the activation. Force majeure cancels contracts like Act of God, right? So there is revenue hits to us as well, massive revenue hits, but it is what it is. I always think compared to those bar workers, those bus boys, those week-to-week earners who are all out of work right now and home with their kids in New York, you know, my problems are not big problems. You know, that's the, what is it, hundreds of thousands possibly in New York City. You know, so and I'm sure in Dublin and in all over the world, right? So.
Oh yeah, I think there was a couple of days last week, 150,000 jobs went across Ireland, and tens of thousands more yesterday when they closed all the fast food outlets and everything else. So, and again, no real indication of exactly when this is going to finish. The construction side of things, James, a lot of Irish people obviously over in New York. It has been boom time for construction in America. Certainly it seemed that way from an Irish perspective, that there were guys heading over and getting jobs. So are they all coming home straight home, or are they going to stick it out for a little while and see what happens? What do you think is going to happen there?
I think I've talked to a couple of my contemporaries, like, you know, and it's so hard to get staff in that most people are getting paid as long as the cash is there. Most people, you know, the first thing that happened when this shut down was building owners reached out and said, our buildings are empty, let's do all these projects. But then, you know, we had construction workers getting the virus. So it was like, okay, we have to shut down. But then it's like, go back in a smaller footprint because keep things going, keep certain guys working. So I think what will happen is the majority, especially of companies, say, of $1 million in revenue and over, will keep their staff as long as they can, because it's so hard to find staff, good staff. And I bet you Johnny would say, I wish, with bar staff, for example, you wish you could do the same thing, right? Because it's even in every industry in New York, we're leaving a situation where there was 100% employment, but now we're going to 30% unemployment, but it will ramp up, it will come back in some form, and then you won't have to look for all those staff again because that costs a lot of money. Right, Johnny?
Yeah.
So that's it. I think. What's going on just on sports, Ger? What's going on with the European leagues? Has Pro 14 done anything yet, or did they intend to try play on?
It's unclear just yet exactly what's going to happen. The European competition, they're going to finish that at some point. The Premiership have said that they're going to play on into June and July if they need to, and that their intention is to finish this season and have next season start late and be truncated. They seem to have been a bit out of step with everybody else. So I would expect that if there is an agreement in place, then you might get an end to a season. The Pro 14 is suspended at the moment, and I'm not sure anybody thinks that it is going to come back. I don't know what the story is with the LNR.
I don't know either. I haven't talked to anybody in France in a couple of weeks. So
James, is there a situation because of the fact that rugby and your league in the United States is sort of in its infancy and a lot of teams are in their infancy? Is there a real threat to the future of a few of the clubs involved?
No, there isn't at all because, a lot of investors have come in the last 6 months alone. The teams that were struggling, like Austin, they're backed by billionaires now. I myself am backed by a big group out of New Zealand. So the league had stabilized a lot in the last 6 to 12 months. So there's no concern there. There's always those rumors, but we got 2 visas through last week. We got Evan Minter out of Cork and Drew Mitchell out of Australia. Now Drew's going to be a year older, so we'll see how that goes because they were meant for this season, right? So, and we expect other visas to come through in the next month. We're still cracking on with building our stadium and all that kind of stuff. So there is no concern there. But you're right, there is perception because it is a new league, but maybe a year ago there might have been concerns because the pockets weren't deep enough, but now the pockets are plenty deep. So, and everybody's looking at this as an opportunity to, we have a new commissioner, he's been here for 4 months, but now he can really exert his influence because he comes from the NBA. I had just hired a CEO, so terrible thing to say, but now he has time to onboard. And you're seeing this kind of across the league, getting better standards, better best practices. We're trying to keep current by launching a virtual league. There's a lot of kinks to work out there, but it's about keeping the brand out there, right? Keeping people aware. We're doing town halls with the local rugby community, talking to college players about recruitment for next year, talking to overseas players, etc. So we're working as much as now as we were 3 weeks ago.
What's the virtual league?
So it's Rugby 20. It's the PlayStation. Well, I think it's PlayStation Xbox, but the PlayStation version. So we couldn't get the maker to turn out an MLR team specific in time. So we had a draft and we assigned national teams. And then our champion, we played. Who did we play last week? We played New Orleans, and it was 12-all. But it wasn't really about the game. It was about. So we have a player playing and a player beside him. In our case, we had the mascot beside him, just taking the piss out of the other players. So it's about the banter. It's about keeping the league going in some form. It's about taking the piss. We have Alex Corbacero, I think this week doing a preview show and really seriously deadpan. So we've got rugby journalists now starting to write reports on it. So it's just a bit of fun. People are stuck in their houses, so trying to keep a bit of banter going. And it's a good way to get to know some of the players as well. So, yeah. And is it good? It's not really good. Rugby video games aren't the most exciting to watch anyway, but it's not necessarily about that, right? So, I think NASCAR has now done the same thing. NBA is talking about doing the same thing. So hopefully it doesn't get so good that people are like, we just want virtual. We won't go back to the real thing like that. But I don't think that's going to happen with rugby because once again, the game, I don't want to get in trouble for this, but the gameplay isn't that exciting. So,
It's possibly a hard question to answer, lads, but when you walk outside the house and you get your bit of fresh air every day and you're chatting to New Yorkers, like, what's the tone like? I think in Ireland there's been, I guess, there's been scenes from like parks, I'm sure you've seen them yourself, and beaches, and perhaps like sometimes the full directives haven't been fully appreciated. Are people behaving themselves in New York? It's obviously a city that's had its hardship in the very recent past, and people have had to put up with a lot post 9/11 in New York. Are people prepared for this? Are they going to play ball when it comes to all the directives coming from the very top?
I think Long Island have had a big spike in the last day or two now, because a lot of people headed to Long Island.
Right.
Even at first, like, because as I said there to you, is the way it came on so quick. I was even looking at going north at first. I was like, oh, this would be a good time to go to Newport and blah, blah. And then you just start thinking about it. So the big spike in numbers in Long Island and all these places, and Jersey Shore now have started complaining about people coming down. Same thing. I think Florida have literally ordered a quarantine, and anyone that flies from north, anyone that comes from New York that lands in Florida, they have to go into two weeks isolation. So that's just a proof that people were, I'm not saying weren't taking it serious, but we're like going, okay, let's get out of town. We'll go closer to the beaches and go stuff like that. As regards being out around New York, I haven't actually been out that much purposely. You know, I've actually took it a bit serious after my first initial thoughts. So I haven't left. I've been outside the apartment. What day is today? Even Tuesday. So St. Patrick's Day was this time last week. I've been out once since in a week. So I don't really know what's going on around New York. Only what I see on TV, which is probably similar to what you see, you know.
It's Wednesday here, Johnny.
Sorry?
It's Wednesday here. We're recording this. It's going out Thursday morning.
Right. Yeah, brilliant. That's good. Oh, sorry, it's Wednesday. There you go.
On my end, well, there's two things there. I've completely lost track of the days, because every day we're kind of not working. There's no sports to mark the weekend. So I do have to constantly check, okay, what day is it? You know, because every day, like that song, every day is exactly the same, you know. I have a dog, so I'm out twice or three times a day, and I have a motorcycle, so I take that around. And I was out at 9 o'clock this morning. I live in Long Island City. It's a very densely populated area of the city, and there was nobody out. It was the first time I really saw, you know, rush hour, whatever day it is. Is it Wednesday or Thursday? And there was nobody out. And it was just like you were walking the dog at 5 o'clock in the morning. So that's the first time I really experienced it. I walked the dog last night, and there was people out because, you know, a lot of these people live in small apartments. They have to get some air, you know. I was in the city yesterday on a job, but I drove around a bit. It's not abandoned like some of the news shows are showing. I don't know where they get those pictures from, because I couldn't find any empty streets, but it's a very quiet Sunday. If that makes sense, Johnny, that makes sense to you, right?
Yeah, I was out last week, and that's what it kind of felt like. I'd actually, a customer called me last night. I think it was very interesting. That customer, you think that they're worried about certain things, and he texted me to see how he was concerned for me and all, and then he asked me, is there any chance he could pick up a keg of Guinness? And he was dead serious, like. And I'm actually considering it. I'm actually going to think about getting it for him today. But he was real, like, he opened up, I hope you're okay, your family are well. Listen, you know my love for the Guinness. Is there any chance I could get a keg today? So I actually might venture into the city today at some point, just because he's probably hanging outside the bar, you know.
Johnny, if you're giving out cakes, mate, you know.
Yeah, I was afraid to say that to you, actually, yeah.
I'll strap one to the back of my motorcycle, no problem.
Yeah, I'm sure you do deliveries.
Well, here, look, any port in a storm, as they say. If delivering kegs of Guinness keeps the bars open, what is your situation, Johnny, with staff? Like, you know, are you going to be able to staff back up again when you open? When do you expect to be open again?
Oh man, well, if you listen to Trump, we'll all be open for Easter Sunday, which is obviously, let's be honest. I would say I'd be very hopeful for May. I really would be very hopeful for early May. But to what extent will we be open? Are we going to just gradually open? Bars were the first thing to take the hit. We were the first things to told to close, and I agree with it. I can see why. Are we going to be the last thing to open? Probably. You know, that'll probably be the case. So in May, as regards staff, all of them are still in town. They're all still happy enough. They were well established, so they've done, you know, hopefully they've saved well. They're entitled to welfare. So I would hope for middle of May, and that's just for us personally. But even for me, my wife, my brothers across the hall, we're all in the industry. None of us have an income. That's just, it's done. And it is what it is. But like I say, the whole world is in the same boat. I'm not crying about it in that sense. I just want to get open. I'm just sick of it. I just want to be open. I wouldn't care if I was getting paid. I would say May. I don't know why I have that optimistic number in my head, but if you'd have told me last week that May was optimistic, I would have been like devastated. But now it's looking like it could be a realistic number for me, but I really don't know, Ger. It could be any time.
I mean, the other side of that, guys, is the schools are going to be closed right through the end of the school year. So, you've got 1.1 million public school students, or city schools, and then God knows what, 300,000 private schools. So those kids are at home. So even if we do get our businesses open, especially hospitality, there's not going to be the same demand right away, Johnny, right? Because people are stuck at home, with their kids, so. Is that the same in Ireland, guys? Or I mean, all schools are closed now, right? So if people said, okay,
they haven't said that it's for the rest of the year, but a lot of people are operating on the basis that the kids won't be going back to school, and that if there is any kids going back to school, it'll be almost exclusively to do exams. So that'd be junior cert and leaving cert, and maybe not even junior cert. Like that hasn't come through yet, but no one can kind of see a pathway where we're on total. They're not using the word lockdown, but all public buildings are closed. Beaches and parks are still open, but restaurants, bars, bookmakers, cinemas, theaters, they're all gone. So, and schools are gone. How do you realistically reopen the schools without everything else coming back on? And I don't know if they're saying it's a 12-week until you reach the peak. We kind of have already only done 2 weeks at this point, so we could be a full 10 weeks away yet before that peak has passed through and it reaches a level where they're happy enough with the amount of people who are going into hospital. So I'd say it's the great unknown is how long this is going to last, and could be a long empty summer of no sport for any of us to talk about.
And that's the thing as well, we need sport. We need, like, to be honest with you, I'm trying not to curse here, but like I've been turning my phone off at night because I'm sick of, sounds terrible, but I'm sick of hearing about it. It's on every channel all the time, you've got every sort of opinion. And it's like, I went for a walk with someone yesterday that I do not want to talk about this. Let's talk about something else, so it'd be lovely to get sport back on in some capacity. I don't know how, because we just need it, in my opinion. But you've got a co-host.
We do have a co-host. How you doing?
Excellent.
Can you give me 2 minutes? Can you give me 2 minutes? Come on, just on a call at the minute.
You can,
quickly. I will be really quick. Yeah, all right.
Daddy, you're always working.
It's true.
But sport is the big thing for me too, because the long haul is basically, we built the long haul on GAA. We that was our big thing. We pushed it from start to finish, and it really paid off for us. The rugby came in hand with it. So with both of them, sports gone, even for me, is just detrimental. Like, so the idea of no championship would be just devastating for us. As regards to trying to get back up and running, everybody will support you here. They're amazing like that. But if you don't have that product to sell to them, the effect that'll have, even for me and for around the world, not having the GAA is massive. And the fear of that not coming back on this year is probably bigger than anything for us anyway. And right now, obviously, the league is looking like it's going to be scrapped, or whatever they decide to do with the league. Now, whether the championship will go to a direct knockout, if that was the case and it did start up whenever, that actually could work out really well for us, because I think, as you were hitting on yesterday, the excitement of that, of having automatic knockout games as opposed to these, probably some of these Super 8 games that are kind of not dead rubbers, but it's next best thing to it. If you're getting the idea of a knockout that anyone could beat anybody, would be amazing if we have about 8 of them as opposed to what we had 3 of late.
Every game's a final, right? Going back to the olden times. What about something like, getting cockfighting or something like that going, rat racing? I mean, is there, I'll have Peter call me after this, but I'm okay with that,
Well, someone did ask Joe yesterday, was there any interest in them doing something about fishing? I'm going to throw the towel at it. The lads start talking about fishing, that's it, I'm out.
Darts.
Final straw.
You have our permission to pull the plug if we ever start talking about darts as well. Well, look, lads, we wish you the very best with both your businesses and your sporting endeavours. Like, we're definitely going to keep in touch with this, because, New York is a city that so many Irish people have a connection with and fully understand the trouble that you guys are going through. And I think it's going to get pretty bad for you guys, certainly in terms of the news over the next while. So if we can be any kind of distraction, then we're happily get on board with that. To the Kennedy boys, you're not related, right? You aren't. This isn't like some weird kind of thing that I've never established here, that you two are somehow related.
I'm sure we probably are, right?
We're related through the long haul. Yeah. I watched RT's documentary on the Kennedys last night. I don't know if we want to be related to them.
There might be a little bit of
I think it could
land
be a
up in Hyannisport, you
virus
can
anyway.
steal.
I think it's a Kerry virus. I think they did it to get rid of Cluxton. I think this could maybe we've seen the last of Stephen Cluxton if this continues.
Jesus.
That could happen.
Lads, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thank you, boys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Off the ball. Oh, wow.